Chapter 361, Another Year of Christmas Holidays. The Christmas holidays had come to an end. Ethan had a particularly fulfilling time. Not only did he and Hermione take their relationship to the next level, but they also spent considerable time delving into the advanced applications of animagus, during which Ethan discovered a new wilderness form and even managed to resurrect Roy. His research on the spirit of nature, alongside Ravenclaw, had also seen significant progress. Hermione, on the other hand, felt quite the opposite. To her, this holiday seemed the shortest of the 4 years she had experienced, so brief that she couldn't accomplish many of her plans. Before the holiday began, she had envisioned a productive time for herself, including a thorough study of Chadwick's Magic, a 7-volume series from the American magic school, Ilvermorny. She was particularly interested in Ethan's revised version, which incorporated elements of arcane magic. Additionally, she had hoped to learn a couple of 5th-level spells with Ethan to prepare for the upcoming second task. Despite her many plans, for the first time, she completed none of them. It wasn't that she felt her time was wasted, rather it just inexplicably seemed to fly by. Indeed, good times always seem to pass too quickly. As the vacation concluded, the academic atmosphere on campus intensified. Professor Snape, seizing the moment, administered a quiz on the first day, catching many students off guard, especially those who had neglected their studies due to the Yule Ball festivities. The results were predictably poor, prompting Snape to assign a hefty amount of homework. This led to a peculiar phenomenon where many students began experiencing nausea and vomiting upon entering the potions classroom, as if repulsed by something within. Seeing Professor Snape only exacerbated their symptoms, leading to rumors that the potions textbooks were somehow contagious. The cause of the students' malaise was the widespread use of the quick-acting truant candy sold by the Weasley twins. Consuming one allowed the user to feign illness convincingly, with symptoms ranging from retching to nosebleeds, blisters, and fever, all customizable for varied excuses to skip class. This epidemic of academic aversion spread to other classes, including herbology. Professor Sprout, however, was prepared. She introduced a bucket of fresh cow dung into the greenhouse, citing its use by Indian shamans as a substitute for bezoar in treating various ailments. The mere smell of it proved miraculously effective in curing the students' self-induced symptoms. The highlight for many was the Care of Magical Creatures class. Ethan and his roommates trudged through the snow to the Black Lake, arriving early to find a crowd already gathered around Hagrid. The towering figure of Hagrid was holding a small unicorn, marking a welcome departure from his usual choice of the perilous blast-ended Scroots. Hagrid had changed significantly since the Yule Ball. He now took greater care in his appearance, dressing neatly and ensuring his hair no longer smelled of motor oil. His choice of class subjects had also improved, focusing on creatures that appealed to a broader audience. The unicorn, with its beauty and charm, was an instant hit, especially among the girls, eliciting squeals of delight and joy. Excitement could be heard from the crowd, though there were also some who admired the cute little creature from afar. After a while, the little unicorn began to paw at the ground with its golden hooves, showing signs of unease, and raised its horned head. "Boys, stand back," Hagrid shouted. "In unfamiliar situations, unicorns prefer the touch of females. Girls, stand in front, approach it carefully, come here, relax." In fact, Hagrid was only partially correct. It's more accurate to say that male unicorns have a preference for girls, and this particular unicorn, being quite young, was no exception. When the girls approached, it calmed down immediately, raising its head proudly to enjoy their caresses. When the boys got closer, it would start to scream loudly again, prompting the girls to soothe it more gently. Many male students couldn't help but feel envious, wishing they could swap places with the unicorn. "I really want to be a unicorn," Steve said, glancing enviously at the creature being caressed by the girls and turning to Ethan. "Let's move farther away, or this guy will start causing trouble again." "Don't worry, it won't cause any trouble," Ethan replied, ignoring his roommate's caution. He walked straight towards the little unicorn. To everyone's surprise, instead of causing a commotion, the unicorn ceased seeking the girls' attention and trotted over to Ethan. It then playfully rolled over, acting coquettishly like a puppy. Ethan skillfully stroked its neck, and the creature visibly relaxed, showing an expression of pure enjoyment. This unexpected scene left everyone stunned. Upon returning to his roommates, Kevin asked curiously, "How did you do that?" The truth was that the unicorn was familiar with Ethan. The creature Hagrid had brought was one of Larry's younger siblings. Larry, on a whim, had recently taken his siblings back to the Forbidden Forest for a visit, where they encountered Hagrid. At his invitation, Larry sent a unicorn to participate in his lesson. Essentially, the unicorn was accustomed to staying in Ethan's demiplane, being cared for by him. Naturally, it felt comfortable around its brother-in-law. However, Ethan couldn't reveal this, so he simply gave Kevin a mysterious smile and said, "That's because I'm very charming." Kevin and the other roommates were impressed. Over the holiday, they had noticed Ethan's increased handsomeness to the point where several boys nearly fell for him. Ethan's interaction with the unicorn only added to his allure. Soon, a saying spread among the young wizards: a truly attractive boy will be recognized by even a unicorn. This sparked an interesting challenge among many confident boys at Hogwarts. They competed to gain the unicorn's approval, using various methods to prove their charm. Some sprayed themselves with alfalfa-flavored perfume, while others offered berries as bribes. Malfoy even showcased his most expensive clothes, all made from unicorn fur, hoping to appeal to the creature. However, these attempts were futile. The unicorn, well cared for by Ethan and having access to precious magical herbs through his sister, was not easily swayed by such trivial offerings. In the end, the only boy who successfully touched the little unicorn turned out to be Ron Weasley. Perhaps it was because some residual effects remained from when he transformed into Ronnie. Regardless, he was accepted by the unicorn. This outcome was baffling to all the young wizards. Ron, known more for his awkwardness than his charm, was the last person they expected to succeed. The girls began to question their own perceptions, wondering if they had been completely oblivious to some indescribable charm that Ron possessed. Intrigued by this possibility, they started to observe him closely, leading Ron to mistakenly believe that he was becoming popular among them. However, this attention was short-lived. After a period of observation, the girls unanimously concluded that their initial impressions were correct, and there was no hidden charm to uncover in Ron after all. The situation took an unexpected turn when Ron was favored by a young unicorn, sparking rumors about his appeal. Given that the girls could not discern any charm in Ron, a new theory emerged. Perhaps Ron's attractiveness was not directed towards girls, but rather towards boys. This speculation gained traction, especially considering the recent attention Ron had received from both Harry and Crumb. Could it be that, in their eyes, Ron was considered exceptionally attractive? This rumor about Ron's supposed appeal quickly spread throughout Hogwarts, reigniting the gossip that had only just begun to die down. Within days, the entire school was abuzz with speculation once again. As the new month begins, I, the author, eagerly anticipate your support. Whether it be through custom orders, flowers, monthly tickets, comments, or rewards, your engagement is incredibly valuable to me. If you have any tickets, please consider sending them my way. Your support is crucial and greatly appreciated. Chapter 362. Ethan didn't realize that his offhand comments had once again stirred the ire of Ron and Harry. It seemed there was indeed a peculiar fate intertwining them. Following the incident, Ron secluded himself in the dormitory, too apprehensive to venture out. Harry, on the other hand, wished he could do the same, but reality dictated otherwise. As a champion, he had more pressing concerns, notably the enigma of the golden egg. With the competition looming less than a week away and no leads on the egg's secret, Harry found himself frequenting the library in search of clues. In this scenario, there was someone even more anxious than Harry, Moody, or rather, Barty Crouch Jr. Crouch was baffled by the legendary savior's apparent ineptitude. As the prophesied child destined to defeat the Dark Lord, Harry's performance was disappointingly average, hardly the mark of a significant figure. In contrast, Ethan Green, despite his Muggle origins, seemed more fitting of the prophecy's description than Harry. Crouch also noted Harry's lack of acumen, observing his tendency to rely heavily on others. In the first task, Harry had clung to his support, outperforming the favored contestant Crumb and securing a high score. This time, however, Harry's ally wasn't the detested Muggle-born Ethan, but another close to him, Hermione Granger. To Crouch, however, the distinction was irrelevant. Both were contemptible Muggle-borns. The revelation of the second task's details before its commencement dismayed Crouch. Competitors were already preparing, while Harry lingered in the library, clueless. This deviation from Crouch's plan, which involved merely inserting Harry's name into the Goblet of Fire and watching events unfold, necessitated additional efforts on his part to ensure Harry's advancement to the final task. One morning, Crouch escorted Harry to the Black Lake, where they observed Victor Krum, clad in swim trunks, demonstrating his readiness for the upcoming task. After imparting a subtle hint, Crouch left Harry to ponder the implications. Despite grasping Moody's suggestion, Harry remained puzzled. However, he recalled Moody's analysis. After 4 years at Hogwarts, if Harry had mastered anything, it was the art of seeking help. Thus, he decided to consult Ethan, under whose guidance Hermione had grown into a capable witch. With Hermione unavailable in the common room, Harry headed towards Gryffindor Tower, only to encounter Luna Lovegood on the stairs. "Hey, Luna, do you know where Ethan is?" Harry seized the opportunity to inquire. "Inside the lounge," Luna indicated towards the door knocker. "Then can you take me to find him?" Harry asked eagerly. "Certainly," Luna replied, leading the way. Ethan easily answered the Eagle Ring's question and escorted Harry into the Ravenclaw common room. As usual, the room was bustling with young wizards. Harry's gaze swiftly swept across the area, landing on Hermione and Ethan, who were seated by a secluded fireplace. Surprisingly, Ginny was also present. In Harry's memory, Ginny and Hermione had always shared a cordial relationship, primarily due to his connection with Ron. However, their friendship seemed to have deepened over time, even as Hermione and Ron's relationship cooled. Yet, Ginny remained as close to Hermione as if they had been friends from the start, with Ron being a later addition to their circle. At that moment, Ginny was consulting Ethan about something in a book she held, while Hermione was busy serving tea. Upon noticing Harry's arrival, Hermione exclaimed, "Harry, I just heard what Ginny said. Is it true? Did your aunt and the others really give you a tissue for Christmas?" "Thank you for your concern, Hermione," Harry replied, his tone more indifferent than Hermione's indignation. "It's better than the toothpick they gave me in the second year, but not as good as the 50-pence piece from the first year." Ethan pondered the significance of the Dursleys' gifts to Harry, suspecting they unwittingly symbolized the Deathly Hallows. The 50-pence piece could represent the Resurrection Stone, the toothpick the Elder Wand, and the tissue, naturally, the Invisibility Cloak. This mirrored the reverse order in which Harry encountered the Deathly Hallows in the original story. Harry, shifting the conversation, said, "Sorry, Hermione, but I need to discuss something. It's about the next task and Krum." "He's crazy," Ginny interjected, shocked at Harry's mention of seeing Krum. "It's January. The Black Lake must be freezing." "No, he's not crazy," Hermione corrected, shaking her head. "Harry is right. Moody is using Krum to hint at the second task." She then explained the details of the upcoming challenge. "The place he comes from is much colder than here. For him, I think it's quite warm," Hermione concluded. "The competition is in the Black Lake? That's absurd." Harry frowned, concerned about the task ahead. His skills had served him well in the first task, but the second posed a new set of challenges. Moreover, Harry was skeptical of Moody's motives, questioning his overt helpfulness. "This is the second time he's offered me advice. I can't believe he's this eager just because I'm Harry Potter." Ethan felt a sense of relief hearing Harry's skepticism. After 4 years, it seemed Dumbledore's protégé was finally learning to question the right people. Year after year, they've suspected Snape or Malfoy, never identifying the true culprit. It's like picking the most suspicious-looking person at a crime scene, Ethan thought, recalling how often they'd been misled. Despite his insights, Ethan had promised Dumbledore not to expose Moody, so he offered Harry a cryptic piece of advice instead. "A healthy dose of skepticism isn't a bad thing, Harry, but I suggest you seek out your godfather to learn occlumency. It will be greatly beneficial to you." Harry felt that learning occlumency wasn't his immediate concern, given the challenges of the Triwizard Tournament. However, upon mentioning this to Sirius, he strongly advised Harry to heed Ethan's suggestion and learn occlumency. Harry, Ethan is a wise man, and you're right to listen to him. Also, it might be best to keep your distance from Ron for a while. I've been reading the Daily Prophet, and it seems possible. Anyway, I understand that the situation between you and him is based on a misunderstanding, but the rumors about his interactions with Crumb might hold some truth. Until we can sort out the facts, it would be wise to maintain some distance from him, Sirius advised. He had experienced several disagreements with Ron in the past. Harry felt somewhat helpless upon hearing this. He was certain that Ron was not the person Sirius suspected him to be. Harry could even observe Ron's budding, albeit unrecognized, feelings for Hermione, a fondness Ron himself seemed unaware of. However, respecting his godfather's advice, Harry decided it would be best to keep his distance from Ron for the time being, especially since Ron seemed to be avoiding him lately. Chapter 363. After Harry left, Ethan remained in the lounge, starting a small fire with Hermione and Ginny. In reality, Hermione was the main participant, while Ginny was more of an observer. Luna also joined them, excitedly holding Iwu. Ethan was teaching Hermione a spell known as the Water Pressure Sphere. This spell, a second-tier energy evocation spell, wasn't overly complicated. Ethan had chosen to teach it because of its rarity. It was a spell that could only be utilized within bodies of water. Upon casting, the water surrounding the target would suddenly exert a tremendous, bone-crushing pressure, akin to that found in the deepest ocean trenches. When casting this spell, you must fully immerse yourself in the sensation of the fluid around the target, allowing your magic to be released evenly. And then, like this, Ethan demonstrated, waving his magic wand. The girls were suddenly enveloped by winds from all directions. Ah! I just combed my hair! My skirt! While the spell could crush bones underwater, in the air, it merely generated a gentle breeze. However, it was enough to cause a commotion among the girls. Really, Ethan, where are you aiming your spell? Ginny's skirt is about to fly up. You did that on purpose. Hermione complained, fixing her hair and attempting to shield Ginny, but Ethan only responded with a grin. Suddenly, Hermione noticed something on her desk, a red phoenix feather with a small roll of parchment tied to it. Is this a letter from Dumbledore? Hermione speculated. In their world, the only person who would send a phoenix letter, aside from members of the Genius Club, was Dumbledore. The phoenix letters from the Genius Club utilized feathers from Ethan's transformation into a phoenix. Hermione had observed that Ethan's feathers were much brighter than Fawkes's and often carried a trace of fire. Do you want me to open it? Hermione offered, curious about why Dumbledore would send a letter at this moment. Please do, Ethan replied nonchalantly, having a hunch about Dumbledore's intentions. There were things he felt comfortable keeping from Harry, but not from the others. Hermione carefully removed the parchment from the phoenix feather and unfolded it to read. Found Professor Moody, purchased the Aquatic Life Carnival potion in Nocturne Alley, and bid farewell to Harry Potter this morning before diving into the Black Lake. How could he do this? Hermione was visibly upset. Professor Moody had interfered with the upcoming game, which was only days away. With the competitors required to enter the Black Lake, Moody's actions left them vulnerable to unforeseen difficulties. In fact, Moody's actions might actually benefit you, Ethan reassured her, patting her hand gently. For instance, the spell I just taught you could now prove useful. Among the competitors, your combat skills are among the strongest. Increasing the difficulty could actually make it easier for you to stand out. But what about Harry? Hermione couldn't help but worry about him. Despite being busier with her studies this term and not spending as much time with Harry as in previous years, she still cared deeply for him as a friend. There's no need to worry about Harry, Ethan assured her. Consider Moody's objective, to ensure Harry passes the game with high scores. He'll have measures in place to keep Harry safe. And if all else fails, I've prepared a last resort for the competition, something I added to the arena recently. It should guarantee that no one's life is in danger. The last resort, recently added, could it be Ms. Rowena? Hermione guessed, surprised. Who else but her is qualified for such a task? Ethan smiled, confirming her suspicion. Ethan cautioned, by the way, I don't want people to know about her resurrection yet, so when the time comes, Rowena will not appear in her original identity. Remember, don't be too conspicuous." "Uh-huh," Hermione nodded repeatedly. In fact, when she heard that Ethan had truly resurrected Rowena Ravenclaw, disbelief was the common reaction among everyone, from the well-informed Kirin-Tor Archmage Jaina to Jin, who admired Ethan immensely. No one could believe it. After all, resurrecting someone who had died 1,000 years ago seemed beyond the realm of possibility. The Philosopher's Stone could perhaps bring back the recently deceased, but this was something else entirely. However, when the heroic spirit of Rowena, bearing a striking resemblance to her statue, appeared before them and fluently recounted events from 1,000 years ago, they were forced to accept the truth. Ethan, already held in high regard, was now viewed with even greater awe. If he could resurrect someone from a millennium ago, what couldn't he do? Rowena Ravenclaw quickly became popular among the group. Perhaps it was her inherent wisdom, or maybe it was the effect of her skill, innate wisdom, but she mastered the arcane magic system in less than a week. It was believed that if she continued at this pace, she would soon be the first to match Ethan's progress in arcane magic. Ethan planned for her to guide everyone in the Genius Club in learning new magic, allowing him more time for his own pursuits. In short, Rowena's abilities were recognized by all. Hermione felt immediately reassured upon learning that Rowena was there to protect her. After comforting Hermione, Ethan issued another warning. Dumbledore specifically asked not to tell Harry about these things, as he hasn't mastered occlumency yet, and could easily be read by others. Let's consider it a form of training for him, and keep it to ourselves. Hermione and Ginny exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. Then there's the issue with those aggressive underwater creatures. I'm worried about Fleur. Gabrielle will be devastated if anything happens to her, Ginny pointed out. You're right. Fleur does need our concern, Ethan acknowledged. Without someone like Professor Moody to look out for her, Fleur might struggle against the underwater creatures. He promised, I'll give Fleur special training to ensure she performs well in the competition. Hermione, would you like to join? Of course, Hermione agreed eagerly. I wouldn't miss your special training. Although Ethan had a good relationship with the Delacour sisters, he was still evaluating them and had not yet decided to include them in the Genius Club. Therefore, perks like the permanent potion, the complete book of all laws, and the fairy silver wand were not yet extended to them. For now, Ethan could only offer special training, such as mastering the head bubble curse, human body transformation spells, and other spells that facilitate underwater movement, along with underwater combat magic like the water pressure sphere. Starting the next day, Crumb was no longer the only one training in the lake. Under Ethan's guidance, Fleur and Hermione began their underwater training. The sight of the two girls in swimsuits drew a crowd of onlookers. Despite efforts to disperse them, some remained shamelessly, with a few even bringing telescopes from the astronomy class. In response, Ethan took merely 3 minutes to conjure a spell known as the Great Holy Light spell. Despite its name suggesting a priestly origin, its function was entirely different from what most would expect. The Great Holy Light was a second-level illusion spell designed to protect it by the Great Holy Light. When a key part is exposed, Holy Light is automatically generated near the part to ensure that others cannot observe it. The degree of protection of the Holy Light can be adjusted freely. Once this spell was cast, the two girls were immediately protected. There were some things that only Ethan could see. Ethan's selfish behavior disappointed many boys, and the number of bystanders finally decreased significantly. After all, no one could bear to be blinded at a critical moment. Ethan was very satisfied with this. He planned to use this spell extensively in the live broadcast system in the future. For example, in the live broadcast of the next game, it would be better to use the Holy Light as a subtle enhancement rather than having the players enter the water enveloped in a conspicuous glow. The effect would be more suitable for live broadcasts. As time passed, the secret of the golden egg was no longer a secret. The 6 warriors knew the key to the project, so they gathered at the lake. Soon, news about the second game and the Black Lake spread throughout all of Hogwarts. The picture showed Hibiscus in a swimsuit. The swimsuit that was beloved by many made a return. Ethan wouldn't use the Great Holy Light technique on everyone, but he wondered if Shenhe could handle it. No Chapter 364, sadly, we move on. Chapter 365, Ethan keenly observed Percy's reaction. This ambitious Weasley was indeed a valuable asset. In fact, Ethan could have easily taken him under his wing. If managed properly, Percy could serve as a loyal subordinate, an official of sorts. However, Ethan still planned to recommend him to Fudge. It wasn't that Ethan disliked Percy. On the contrary, a person who could achieve 12 OWLs with an S certificate was a talent in any context. But Ethan felt that Percy would play a more significant role under Fudge's leadership than under Jaina's, similar to his current position under Crouch. "Keep up the good work, Percy," Ethan said, waving his hand as he walked into the classroom, which had been repurposed as a conference room. Upon entering, Ethan noticed that Dumbledore and the other three principals were absent. As expected, only Crouch, along with Bagman, awaited him inside. Crouch looked visibly distressed, his complexion sallow, his skin dry and wrinkled, clearly in a foul mood. Percy's intelligence had been accurate in this regard. Ethan mused that if Crouch knew what his assistant had done, his expression would be 10 times worse. In contrast, Bagman appeared in high spirits, smiling and with a healthy red glow to his cheeks, far from the goblin debt collector depicted in the original story. Clearly, with Jaina's support, Bagman was faring well. "Hello, Mr. Green, welcome." Bagman greeted Ethan enthusiastically. "We've called you here to discuss the selection method for the key props for the next task. We need to select an important person from each champion, render them unconscious, and place them at the bottom of the Black Lake as hostages. The champions will then have to rescue them," Bagman explained. "To prevent the three principals from leaking details, this task has been assigned to the three of us, primarily Mr. Crouch, who will oversee the implementation." Bagman then expressed his concern. "There's some disagreement among us on how to choose the hostages for the champions. I believe it would be better to consult the champions themselves, but Mr. Crouch has a different view." Crouch, looking stern, interjected, "That's out of the question. If asked directly, the champions would never reveal their most important person, fearing others might find out. I understand these kids. To simulate a real combat scenario, we can't simply cater to their whims. We must use legilimency to identify truly important individuals as hostages without their knowledge to accurately test their emergency response capabilities." "That's my stance. What's yours?" Crouch asked, eyeing Ethan skeptically, as if anticipating a personal bias. "I know some of these champions are close to you. Don't let that cloud your judgment." Crouch's approach, marked by suspicion and a presumption of guilt, was no surprise given his history with cases like Sirius's. Ethan, however, remained unfazed. "Although I share Bagman's view, I doubt you'll consider my opinion," Ethan replied, locking eyes with Crouch. "But let me be clear, whether you choose to ask directly or use legilimency, be prepared for it to backfire." "Backfire? Against mere children?" Crouch scoffed, underestimating their capabilities. "You underestimate the power of our legilimency experts. None, not even you, can withstand their prowess." With that, Crouch stood up and opened the door, decisively ending the discussion. "All your opinions. Ignorant children should not point fingers at such things. Percy, let's go." "Okay, Mr. Crouch." Percy Weasley, standing outside the door, bowed respectfully to Crouch and then followed him, leaving step by step, as if the person who had just been negotiating with Ethan was not him. Now, only Ethan and Bagman were left in the classroom. "Sorry, Ethan. I couldn't convince him on this," Bagman said, coming to Ethan's side with a look of embarrassment. "Crouch can be too stubborn sometimes. There's nothing I can do about it." He was trying to show his loyalty. After all, he had always promised Ethan that he would support him. In the end, he failed to sway Crouch. "It's okay, Ludo. It's not your fault," Ethan said, crossing his arms and sneering. "The rocks he lifted will naturally hit his own feet." "Ah, that's good to hear," Bagman replied, nodding happily. Then, with an ambiguous smile, he added, "By the way, Ethan, speaking of your good partner, Miss Cirilla Ray Allen, she went to Albania to capture fugitives and should be back soon. But, well..." At this point, his words trailed off, as if he was carefully choosing his next words. Ethan immediately sensed something was amiss and asked anxiously, What's wrong? Did something happen to her? No, no, no. Don't worry. Miss Ray Allen is unscathed, Bagman quickly clarified. It's just that during the mission, her methods were a bit intense and many people were killed. Seeing Ethan's puzzled look, Bagman explained further. To be specific, Miss Ray Allen had to defend herself during an arrest and ended up using a long-distance weapon. Her response was far more forceful than necessary. Although it was within the legal scope of self-defense, the Ministry of Magic now views her actions unfavorably. Bagman sighed, seemingly regretful of the situation. This has indeed tarnished her reputation. Now, in some of the more violent departments of the Ministry, including the Aurors and Strikers, many refer to her as a dark wizard who enjoys killing. After hearing this, Ethan narrowed his eyes. I understand, Bagman. Thank you for letting me know. See you later. With that, he waved and left the classroom. Upon returning to the tower, Ethan wrote directly to Gianna, who provided a detailed explanation. Bagman was right. Cyrilla had, during the hunt, demonstrated exceptional bravery and skill, often allowing fugitives to pose a fatal threat to her, thereby putting herself in danger before forcing herself into a last resort and using extreme measures to kill the fugitive on the spot. This method, if used sparingly, would not have raised eyebrows, but its frequent application made it obvious that it was intentional. As for the rumors, Gianna mentioned that they were mostly spread by traditional Aurors, or old-school Aurors, who adhered to the established model. Initially, not many of the younger generation of Aurors paid much attention to these rumors. The conflict between these old Aurors and Gianna's approach was almost palpable. Cyrilla had, in fact, defeated the celebrated veteran Moody in duels 3 times in a row, forcing him into retirement. This was a direct challenge to the old-style Aurors, and she became a symbol for the younger generation of new-style Aurors. They aimed to dethrone this symbol. Gianna said she would handle the matter, but since it was not yet time to act decisively, Cyrilla might have to endure this situation for a while longer. Huh. Let them be proud for a few more days, Ethan snorted coldly, ultimately agreeing with Gianna's approach. However, he also decided to offer comfort to Cyrilla upon her return. After all, she had taken these actions on his behalf. In fact, upon hearing about Cyrilla's indiscriminate actions, Ethan had a good idea of what the girl was thinking. Before she left, she requested some soul stones from Ethan, indicating her intention to use them. The souls of these deceased fugitives would eventually serve as materials for Ethan. As for why Cyrilla undertook this, Ethan surmised that it was partly because she knew he needed to replenish his soul. However, another reason was to satisfy her own sense of justice. After all, Cyrilla was deeply dissatisfied with the Ministry of Magic's leniency and its discrimination against Muggles during this era. Her frustration even led her to personally torture and execute several prisoners whom she deemed deserving of death. This time, Ethan believed that the unfortunate fugitives Cyrilla accidentally killed were those she considered guilty of egregious crimes, yet not sufficiently punished after being captured and returned to the Ministry of Magic. However, she did heed Ethan's advice this time. Instead of choosing to kill out of anger, she granted them a swift death. What could Ethan say about her actions? Naturally, he would support his partner. Update 4/3. Additional update 71. The new month has arrived, so please support me with custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have votes, kindly cast them for me, the author. This support is truly significant to me. Very important. Chapter 366. The following day, old Barty Crouch made another visit to Hogwarts. This time, he wasn't accompanied by Percy Weasley, but by Tonks, who was responsible for security, and a scholarly-looking man in his 50s, wearing glasses. From the castle windows, they observed Ethan Green coaching Hermione and Fleur in casting spells into the water, while Harry Potter practiced the head bubble charm nearby. Mr. Barnett and I will now discreetly use legilimency on the 3 individuals beside Ethan Green to identify who they hold most dear, Crouch explained, gesturing impatiently to Tonks. There's no danger at Hogwarts, so your presence is unnecessary. However, Tonks shook her head, insisting, Mr. Crouch, ensuring your safety is my duty. Please don't complicate my task. Moreover, using legilimency without consent is an aggressive act. I cannot assure that it won't lead to unintended consequences. What harm could possibly come to these young, naive individuals? Crouch retorted, then turned to the man beside him, introducing him to Tonks as Mr. Maxwell Barnett, a collaborator from the Ministry of Magic, a renowned legilimens and occlumency master, and the author of Advanced Occlumency Guide. With him in action, our presence will go unnoticed. Barnett adjusted his glasses and nodded at Tonks, who remained steadfast. After a long stare from Crouch which failed to intimidate her, he snorted in resignation and led the way. Tonks followed, her eyes narrowed in thought. Ethan, no matter how much you've trained them in anti-legilimency, extracting Hermione's deepest thoughts could deplete all their magical strength, she mused. They positioned themselves behind a tree a few dozen meters from Ethan and the others by the Black Lake. Is this distance sufficient? Crouch whispered. It's perfect. We'll begin shortly, Barnett replied softly, his voice filled with anticipation. Tonks crossed her arms and leaned against the tree, watching with a smirk. Crouch glanced at the young wizards by the lake, confident in Barnett's legilimency skills against the inexperienced students. Barnett, appearing eager, took out his wand and aimed it at the trio. Let's start with this boy, he said, rubbing his hands together, an action that made Tonks frown. At that moment, Ethan, who was by the lakeside, subtly turned his gaze towards Crouch and his companions. Barnett, preparing to cast legilimency, was unaware that Ethan had already detected the impending mental intrusion with his psychic powers. Despite Barnett's stealth, Ethan was not fooled. Ethan remained calm, his cold gaze fixed on them. His confidence in his psychic abilities and Hermione's legilimency defense, which he had personally trained, was unwavering. He had already assessed Barnett's level and was prepared to witness their downfall. Tonks observed Barnett close his eyes slightly, his mind's power transforming into a probe that began to delve into Harry Potter's mind from afar. Barnett murmured, Harry Potter, the boy who lived, let's see, who matters most to you? After a brief pause, he uttered in a dreamy tone, Zhang Chu, a beautiful girl from the Dragon Kingdom. This is the person he has a crush on. However, it seems she has no interest in Harry. I guess that's impossible. Ron Weasley, his best friend, though they've had some quarrels recently. Well, he's a potential choice. Ginny Weasley, another Weasley, once danced with him. She was one of them. In just a moment, Max Barnett had compiled a list of potential hostages for the Harry Potter event, showcasing his adept skills. Ron Weasley, Ginny Weasley, 2 Weasleys. Crouch looked at the names before him, feeling a sense of fondness for Harry. He, too, had a Weasley working under him, a young man who diligently completed the tasks assigned to him and even assisted with mundane personal matters. This Weasley was serious and hard-working. The other, he presumed, was Ron's brother. Crouch thought this, yet he never realized the young man's dedication stemmed not from loyalty, but from a desire to uncover his conspiracy. Next, Barnett turned his attention to Fleur Delacour. Now, we have Miss Fleur Delacour, a young half-blood Vila. Vilas possess a unique talent in psychic magic. Let's delve into her thoughts. Tonks watched the middle-aged man, now devoid of his scholarly demeanor, with a speechless expression. This master of legilimency seemed overly thrilled about invading others' minds. His passion clearly fueled his expertise. Ah, I didn't expect Ethan Green to be quite popular. Tonks perked up when Barnett mentioned the name. Mr. Potter considers him an important friend, and this is even more surprising. He sees him as his beloved. Oh, she believes she has many rivals for his affection. Barnett then indulged in gossip. I heard that the famous dark wizard hunter and Ethan Green were Quidditch teammates for 3 years. After winning the World Cup, they shared a passionate kiss. Miss Granger is seen as a rival by Miss Fleur. Indeed, Mr. Green's love life is quite eventful. Barnett's face flushed with excitement as he spoke. Tonks was exasperated. What kind of master was this? He was merely a gossip monger. She thought Barnett and Rita Skeeter of the Daily Prophet would have much in common. Thankfully, legilimency could only access surface thoughts and emotions, preventing him from uncovering anything he desired, or else he would surely rival Skeeter. Why not let Ethan Green be one of the champion's hostages? Barnett suggested excitedly, observing Ethan instructing 2 girls nearby. Though I haven't used legilimency on Miss Granger, I suspect all 3 champions would eagerly vie for this hostage, making the event thrilling. Don't even think about it, Mr. Barnett. Tonks firmly rejected the idea to prevent further complications. Ethan is the referee of the Triwizard Tournament and has his own duties. What a shame, Barnett sighed, then added. Since Mr. Green is not an option, the hostage for Miss Delacour should be Miss Gabrielle Delacour, her beloved sister. He then turned his attention to Hermione Granger. Ah, in Miss Delacour's mind, Miss Granger is both a friend and a rival for love. Let's see if Miss Granger also harbors feelings for Mr. Green. After speaking, Barnett closed his eyes once more, extending his thoughts to explore Hermione's mind, which depicted her in a swimsuit. Chapter 367, Crouch's Unexpected Challenge. Crouch had fully expected his use of legilimency to proceed as smoothly as it had in the past. However, this time, Barnett encountered an unusual reaction. Despite his efforts, he achieved no results, which led him to lean forward involuntarily, as though attempting to physically bridge the gap to the world he sought to explore. What happened? Crouch inquired casually. My legilimency can only see a blank, Barnett replied, his expression grave. This little witch has a lot of tricks up her sleeve. Let's see what you're truly capable of. With a frown, Barnett concentrated all his attention and began a more serious exploration of Hermione's mind. On Hermione's end, the moment Barnett employed legilimency, she instinctively activated mechanized mind, a result of Ethan's rigorous training. Under normal circumstances, maintaining a clumency or using mechanized mind for an extended period is impossible. The only spell known to offer regular protection of the mind is the 8th-level Psychic Barrier, a spell not even Ethan, with his talent derived from the Feathered Serpent's Wilderness form ability, has mastered yet. In such situations, the only way to ensure psychic protection is activated in time is through continuous sensitivity training to legilimency. This allows one to reflexively turn on psychic protection, avoiding the delay of a proactive response. This was precisely Hermione's advantage when Barnett attacked. Her instincts activated mechanized mind before her conscious mind could react. Suddenly, Hermione's mind became a fortress of cold reason. All her thoughts, from her dedication to learning magic, her joy in Ethan's company, her discomfort with Fleur's closeness to Ethan, to her frustration with Harry's slow learning progress, were swept away. The thoughts presented to Barnett were terrifyingly blank. Meanwhile, Hermione's mechanical thinking quickly analyzed the situation and devised a counterattack. Unaware of the challenge he faced, Barnett increased his efforts, hoping to shatter the opponent's defenses in one swift move. As he intensified his efforts, he was delighted to find cracks appearing in the blank world he encountered. Encouraged, Barnett increased the intensity of his probe. To his surprise, the blank world shattered like a mirror, revealing a scene reminiscent of a fairy tale. He found himself in a meadow filled with flowers, under a pink sky with clouds like cotton candy. The air was sweet, filled with the songs of birds and the fragrance of flowers. Is this Miss Granger's true vision? She truly is a little girl, Barnett thought, smiling proudly as he ventured further into this consciousness. Soon, he encountered a castle of exaggerated fairy tale design and a young, beautiful woman at its entrance. Barnett was taken aback by her appearance. She had a pure face, a stunning figure, and wore a fancy dancer's costume, exactly his preferred type. She smiled and extended her hand, which Barnett hesitantly accepted, allowing her to lead him into the castle. The interior was even more opulent, with marble floors, walls adorned with gold foil, and enormous chandeliers that cast a soft glow. In the courtyard stood a huge fountain, crowned with a statue. In the center of the pool, water cascaded down from the hands of a statue, creating a crystal-clear splash. The fountain was encircled by long tables laden with an impressive array of food and wine. The woman clapped her hands, summoning a group of women, each uniquely beautiful but sharing the same allure. They gathered around, engaging in playful banter and reveling in the company of Barnett. The abundance of fine food and wine filled Barnett with joy. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere became increasingly intoxicating, and the women began to shed their clothes. Just as Barnett anticipated a turn towards the sensual, he was horrified to discover that beneath their garments the women's bodies were not youthful and beautiful, but were instead decaying, crawling with maggots, and showing exposed bones. Their faces transformed too, some revealing their true grotesque nature, others stretching into unnerving grins, and some having no faces at all. Startled, Barnett stumbled backward, knocking over a table of dishes. To his dismay, the sumptuous delicacies had transformed into rotten, years-old refuse swarming with flies. Plates were now filled with spiders, scorpions, centipedes, toads, and other venomous creatures, resembling a macabre feast for the dead. The surroundings morphed as well. The sky darkened under heavy clouds, blocking out the sun. Flowers wilted rapidly, grass turned brittle, and the castle's walls crumbled to reveal decay within. The once gleaming spires dulled, and the chandeliers flickered ominously. The fountain ceased its flow, leaving the pool with black, foul-smelling water. In a panic, Barnett attempted to flee, but found himself trapped by high walls and dense thorny forests. His cries for help went unanswered, enveloped by fear and desperation. The monstrous women closed in on him, and Barnett screamed, pleading for them to stay away. Back in reality, Crouch and Tonks were taken aback to see Barnett trembling and stumbling among the trees by the lake, having discarded his wand and waving his hands in the air in distress, with a noticeable stain spreading down his trousers. Crouch attempted to use his wand to awaken Barnett, but to no avail. Realizing the urgency, he turned to the group by the lakeside and called out, "Hermione Granger, I order you to stop immediately." The atmosphere by the lakeside grew tense as everyone's attention shifted to Crouch's sudden appearance. Ethan stepped protectively in front of Hermione, confronting Crouch. "Mr. Crouch, what do you intend to do with Hogwarts' champions?" The young wizards gathered around, but Ethan's firm stance pushed Crouch to reconsider his approach. Seeing Barnett's distress, Crouch's tone softened. "Mr. Green, Miss Granger, we apologize for any distress we've caused. We employed legilimency on Miss Granger to identify the most significant person in her mind, intending to use that information as leverage in the second task. Please, release him from the spell." Crouch, responsible for this oversight and having inadvertently exposed a secret of the tournament, was desperate to rectify the situation. The young wizards around Ethan and Crouch listened intently, captivated by the unfolding drama. It seemed they knew something they shouldn't. Crouch, noticing his slip of the tongue, appeared even more embarrassed. On Ethan's side, Hermione gave him a questioning look, to which Ethan nodded. In front of everyone, Hermione had already put Crouch in an awkward position, and there was no need to push further. After all, Crouch was a master of legilimency and had his own network. In such cases, a minor punishment or a stern warning would suffice. Going too far could easily provoke resentment. Understanding this, Hermione nodded and obediently dispelled the magic. Barnett stood there, his confusion fading as clarity returned. Realizing what had happened, the middle-aged man's face turned red with shame. Overwhelmed, he didn't even attempt to address his wet pants and hurried off the lawn, too embarrassed to exchange words with Mr. Crouch. "Thank you, Mr. Howe," Crouch said, his voice stiff as he tried to suppress his irritation. Chapter 368. Seeing Hermione let Barnett go, Crouch was displeased. He hadn't realized that Miss Proudmoore's younger brother, who possessed extraordinary abilities, was surrounded by equally formidable partners. Hermione Granger, a young witch of Muggle origin, had shown remarkable prowess. Despite her youth, she had managed to defeat a master of legilimency. Crouch couldn't help but think that she would likely become a new pillar of Jaina's family. This thought led him to reflect on his own missing and underachieving son, which did nothing to improve his mood. "Why were you so aggressive in your counterattack against legilimency, Miss Granger? Weren't you concerned about harming your classmates?" Crouch asked, his tone laced with accusation. "Except for Ethan, none of my classmates are masters of legilimency," Hermione retorted, crossing her arms. "And at Ethan's level, he's certainly not afraid of my counterattacks." Crouch, taken aback by her sharp tongue, pressed on. "And what about Barnett? Did he just deserve it?" Stumbling upon someone's thoughts without permission is considered quite rude, as everyone in our society knows. Protecting one's privacy is never excessive. I doubt anyone would want their thoughts and privacy exposed, Hermione pointed out. Her speech, owned in the erudite society, resonated with the young wizards around her, who voiced their agreement. "Miss Granger is right," they exclaimed. "Using legilimency without permission is invasive." Hermione nodded in agreement, turning back to Crouch. You see, everyone agrees. Moreover, even if you had a valid reason, I was unaware of it. For all I knew, you could have been a dark wizard. In the end, the fault lies with you for initiating this. My use of false seem to retaliate was entirely justified, Hermione concluded, referring to the 5th-level illusion spell that had embarrassed Barnett. Crouch found himself at a loss for words. Hermione's argument was not only logical, but had also swayed public opinion in her favor. What about the game? If you continue like this, we won't be able to choose a hostage, Crouch finally managed to say, albeit dryly. Ethan responded, Didn't Bagman and I already share our thoughts on this yesterday? Just ask the warrior themselves. Crouch, realizing that prolonging the argument would be futile, quickly left the scene without another word. Tonks gave Hermione a thumbs up before hurrying after Crouch. Let's all disperse. Ethan then waved his hand, dispersing the crowd, and continued practicing magic with a few others. As the incident spread, the selection of the most important person for the Triwizard Tournament's second task became a hot topic at Hogwarts. The referees, now openly debating how to determine the hostage due to Crouch's leak, were joined by the school principals. After a heated debate between Mrs. Maxim and Karkaroff, it was decided that the warriors themselves would choose their hostages, as legitimacy could not be used on Hermione to determine her choice. Hermione's true inner thoughts revealed her concerns about fairness in the selection process for the Triwizard Tournament. She and the others agreed that the identity of the hostage candidates should remain confidential, known only to the individuals involved and the Triwizard Tournament Organizing Committee, to prevent any unforeseen incidents. Ethan was the first to be consulted due to his leading score from the first task. With Barty Crouch Sr. removed from his role due to misconduct, Ludo Bagman took over the commentary but shied away from additional responsibilities, delegating the task to Nymphadora Tonks, the head of security. Despite her initial low rank within the committee, Tonks accepted the assignment without hesitation and approached Hermione first. Given their close relationship, Hermione immediately suggested Ginny Weasley's name. Ginny, thrilled by the gesture, accepted the role, valuing her friendship with Hermione. Fleur Delacour's choice of her sister, Gabrielle, as a hostage didn't surprise Tonks. Fleur was entirely hesitant due to the risks involved in the tournament, but Ethan's assurance provided her with some comfort. The process proceeded smoothly, boosting the confidence of Tonks and her team. When they approached Victor Krum, he suggested Ronnie Weasley, under the watchful eye of Igor Karkaroff. Krum had hoped to nominate Hermione, seeing the second task as an opportunity for a heroic rescue, but since Hermione was a competitor herself, he couldn't. Tonks and the staff were puzzled by the name Ronnie Weasley, unable to find any student by that name at Hogwarts. Krum clarified that Ronnie Weasley was a distant relative of the Weasley family, insisting on inviting her despite the staff's confusion. They decided not to contact the Weasley family directly to keep the selection process secret, and instead went to Ginny Weasley, who had already agreed to participate. Ginny was taken aback by the mention of Ronnie Weasley, realizing the rumors about her brother Ron and Krum had taken an unexpected turn. She played along, suggesting that Sister Roni was closest to Harry Potter, who would know her whereabouts. Thus, Krum and Tonks sought out Harry. Before they could explain their visit, Harry began to announce his choice of hostage, but Krum interrupted, claiming Ronnie as his choice. Harry was bewildered, intending to choose Ron Weasley, not understanding where Ronnie came from. However, seeing Krum's earnestness, Harry hesitated, about to clarify the misunderstanding, but Krum preemptively insisted on his choice, leaving the situation unresolved. Harry, don't attempt to monopolize Ron Weasley by using tricks to bind her to you. Such behavior is distasteful. Tell us where she is. Faced with the choice, Harry asked, If I choose Ron, what should I do? Krum looked at him with a hint of contempt. You could always choose Ron. You're quite adept at that, aren't you? Krum's accusations and the insinuation about Harry's persuasive skills deeply angered him. Harry also realized that choosing Ron would reignite the rumors about their supposedly taboo relationship. Determined, he made his decision clear. Give up, Krum. I won't disclose Ron's location, Harry declared. Then, turning to Tonks, he announced, The The hostage I've chosen is Ron Weasley, but she's currently not at Hogwarts. I will ensure she is present before the game starts. Chapter 369. Ultimately, Harry emerged victorious in a dispute with Krum over the choice of Ron Weasley as a hostage. Tonks managed to dissuade Krum with a single argument. You can't choose someone as a hostage if you can't find them. She explained, although we didn't see Ron Weasley in the end, Harry has promised to bring him at the critical moment. If Ron doesn't arrive by the deadline, Harry will voluntarily forfeit the game. Can you make such a promise? Krum shook his head. The truth was, his only interaction with Ron Weasley had been a dance. If he knew how to find Ron, he wouldn't have approached Harry in the first place. That's right, Tonks continued. This proves that you can't control this girl, but Harry can. You'd better choose someone within your reach. Her words nearly shattered Krum's resolve, but he had to admit the truth in them and decided not to pursue the matter further. Consequently, Krum chose a female fan from Hogwarts who admired him. Initially, he had planned to select a friend from Durmstrang as a hostage, but reconsidered due to Rita Skeeter's reports. The other champions, Estella Dumont and Polyacco, also successfully found their hostages. As the time for the second task approached, all champions had selected their hostages, though only 5 could be present at any given time. As the deadline neared, Harry could no longer contain his anxiety and sought out Ethan. In a classroom, after Transfiguration class, Harry cornered Ethan with a plea for help. Ethan, initially puzzled by Harry's mysterious invitation, soon realized Harry was asking for assistance again. It seemed Harry had developed a habit of turning to him whenever he faced a problem. Ethan remembered how, at the Yule Ball, Harry had seen his crush, Cho Chang, dancing and laughing with Ethan and Tonks, effectively ending Harry's budding first love. Ethan had expected Harry to be upset with him for a while, but surprisingly, Harry had quickly moved past the incident and was now shamelessly asking for help again. You are the chosen one, appointed by Dumbledore. Can't you solve your own problems without always running to us? Ethan thought, sharing a sentiment with Crouch Jr. Despite his frustration, Ethan maintained a patient demeanor and asked, What's the matter this time, Harry? Harry hesitated before finally asking for a potion, specifically a sex change potion. Ethan was taken aback. A sex change potion? Why on earth would you need that? Harry awkwardly explained that he wanted to use Ron as a hostage in the second task, which left Ethan utterly astonished. I deeply detested the idea, yet found myself contemplating it once more. What was going on? The notion that someone might actively desire to change their gender was baffling to me. With a sense of bewilderment, I couldn't help but ask, Ron, he's not actually getting addicted to transforming into a woman, is he? If that were the case, I would have inadvertently caused the Weasleys a great deal of trouble, essentially swapping a son for a daughter. It was a situation I couldn't possibly explain to them. Thankfully, Harry quickly dismissed my concern. No, that's not it at all. I initially wanted Ron to act as my hostage, but after Rita's aggravating report, if I went through with it, everyone would start rumors again. Harry explained, his voice tinged with frustration. I couldn't choose a male hostage, and the only girl I'm close to, Ginny, was already Hermione's hostage. So, Ron was my only option. It seemed Harry was still feeling the effects of a previous misunderstanding. I silently criticized Harry's lack of insight, but accepted his reasoning. I didn't want to cause any more confusion or misunderstandings. Understanding the root of the issue stemmed from my own prank. I knew I had to see it through responsibly. Got it, Harry, don't worry, I reassured him, reaching into my bag to retrieve a crystal bottle filled with a familiar pink potion. However, this potion appeared darker than the one I had given him before. Handing the bottle to Harry, I explained, this is a concentrated version of the transformation potion. After drinking it, the effect will last for 24 hours, which should be more than enough for the entire game. Harry's reaction upon receiving the potion was one of sheer joy. Fantastic! This means I won't be mistaken for someone else. However, his enthusiasm seemed excessive to me, sparking a hint of suspicion. Was avoiding misidentification truly the only reason for his excitement? Pondering Harry's earlier slip of the tongue, I couldn't help but question his motives. Even with the potion, do you think Ron will be willing to go through with it again? Won't he feel uncomfortable? I asked tentatively. Of course, he's willing, Harry responded eagerly. Actually, I've already spoken to him before coming here, and he's agreed to continue using the transformation potion to support me. So, it appeared that both parties were agreeable to the arrangement. It dawned on me that Harry's lack of anger over the situation might be due to someone else capturing his affections. Reflecting on everything, I realized the unexpected consequences of my initial prank. Giving Ron the transformation potion was meant as a harmless joke. I never anticipated such a complex aftermath. Perhaps the underlying reason was Harry's use of the Guardian of Love spell on Ron. This magic might not only offer protection, but could also subtly influence their relationship. The potential development of Harry and Ron's friendship left me both confused and curious about what the future might hold. Chapter 3: The Second Game. On January 7th, the day of the second game finally arrived. After breakfast, Ethan and his group made their way directly to the arena by the Black Lake. It was the coldest morning of the winter, with the trees adorned in frost flowers, as if exuding frost themselves. The sky was a clear blue, resembling a bright mirror. The sunlight, bright yet cold, shone upon the icy lake, offering no warmth. Approaching the Black Lake, Ethan spotted a huge observation deck, erected in a semicircular shape on the lake shore from a distance. It had been constructed overnight. Many students had arrived earlier, filling the rows of seats. Jiang Chu and Luna offered a few words of encouragement to Hermione before hurrying off to secure a good viewing spot. The judges were seated at a separate table by the water, covered with a golden tablecloth. Ethan walked over with Hermione, where Ludo Bagman, who had been eagerly waiting, greeted them warmly. Ethan, Granger, you've arrived just in time. Come, the game is about to start. Ethan, your seat is here, and Miss Granger, you need to warm up. You'll be heading to the lake together shortly. Ethan nodded to Hermione and watched as she walked towards the center of the arena, which had been transformed into a small pier with a long wooden board extending into the Black Lake. He then took his place at the judges' table. Dumbledore smiled and winked at Ethan, while Crouch remained indifferent, not sparing Ethan a glance. Madame Maxime wore a soft smile, seemingly unbothered by anything, and Karkaroff hovered around his prized student, Crumb. Tonks approached Ethan, engaging him in a quiet conversation. As the time neared 9:30, the audience seats were fully occupied. Ludo Bagman stood up, enhanced his voice with a spell, and took his position in front of the stage. After announcing various precautions for the second game and adopting a more serious demeanor, he addressed the audience. Last night, we took the warriors' most cherished treasures and placed them in the center of the Black Lake. Their mission is to retrieve these treasures within an hour. I must remind the warriors that time is of the essence. Failure to return within the allotted time could result in the permanent loss of their treasure. At that moment, an illusion of an underwater scene appeared in the sky, showcasing a large mermaid village, surrounded by stone dwellings and merpeople wielding steel forks swimming across the screen. These mermaids, with their human-like upper bodies and fishtails, bore a stark contrast to the beautiful mermaids of fairy tales, resembling more closely the real-life version of the Little Mermaid heroine. In the center of the scene, a mermaid statue held the sleeping hostages tied to its tail. In the audience, Malfoy's eyes widened in disbelief upon seeing Ron Weasley among the hostages. Crumb's expression darkened, realizing that the warrior meant to rescue Ron was not him. Fleur, upon spotting Gabrielle, displayed a look of anxiety. Despite having chosen her sister for this task, the sight of Gabrielle underwater filled her with worry. "Don't worry, Fleur," Hermione reassured her, standing by her side. "Ethan has made special arrangements for the game. She won't be in any danger." Fleur nodded, trusting in Ethan's preparations. Ethan was highly trusted. "Listen up, everyone. Our champions are ready. After I blow the whistle, the second task will begin. They have 1 full hour to retrieve what was taken from them," announced Bagman, his voice booming like thunder, carrying across the dark Black Lake to the stands. The sharp whistle pierced the cold, still air, followed by a burst of cheers and applause from the audience. The champions, ready to demonstrate their magical prowess, prepared for the task ahead. Hermione and Fleur, alongside the other champions, shed their coats to reveal their form-fitting swimsuits. Ethan's eyes sparkled at the sight, but he quickly cast the Great Holy Light technique, covering their key areas with a protective glow. This session, however, was met with immediate boos from the crowd, who were disappointed by his protective gesture. Hermione had grown accustomed to her body glowing when in a swimsuit, while Fleur actually smiled, particularly noticing that Estelle lacked this protective light. She turned and blew a kiss to Ethan at the referee's table, appreciating his concern. As the first-place winner of a previous competition, Hermione was the first to enter the water. She pointed her wand at herself, and though she appeared unchanged at first glance, the audience, through the enchanted live broadcast, could see her skin become slightly translucent, with tiny water droplets orbiting her body like the rings of Saturn. Miss Granger didn't use the conventional head bubble curse, but instead employed a mysterious spell on herself. Oh, we have news from the referee's bench. This spell is called Heart of Flowing Water, created by Ethan Green. Bagman announced, praising Ethan's innovation. This spell transforms part of the caster's body into water, allowing them to adapt better to underwater environments. It's a brilliant spell, superior even to a fish's adaptation. Hermione dove gracefully into the water, and as she submerged, the Great Holy Light technique Ethan had applied was transferred to the live illusion, ensuring she wouldn't be overly conspicuous underwater. Her swimming style was unique. She seemed to be propelled by an unseen current, moving swiftly without much leg movement. This was speculated to be a result of her partial water elemental transformation. Fleur was the second to enter the water, using a spell to transform her lower body into a fishtail and developing gill slits behind her ears. With Ethan's guidance, she had alternatives to the head bubble curse, which she found unattractive and impractical. Fleur's transformation made her as beautiful as a fairy tale mermaid, not the mermaids of the Black Lake. Harry, unable to master the head bubble curse, opted for gillyweed. He ingested the plant, and his body underwent a dramatic transformation. Gills appeared at the base of his ears, and his fingers and toes developed webbing, enhancing his swimming capabilities. Though his transformation was less graceful than the others, it was equally effective in adapting to the underwater environment. Fleur's transformation was striking, but there were others who managed to look even more peculiar. The two contestants from Beauxbaton, Krum and Polyakov, had also opted for a human transformation, aiming to turn themselves into sharks. Unfortunately, their skills were not quite up to the task, and they only managed a partial transformation. The young wizards in the stands couldn't hide their disgusted expressions. Despite the power demonstrated by this magic, the sight was undeniably grotesque at the moment. From the neck down, their bodies remained human, but their heads had transformed into those of sharks. This was in stark contrast to Fleur, whose transformation was more harmonious, with a human upper body and a fish-like lower body. The sight was so jarring that it made onlookers wish they could look away. However, there was a practical advantage to their choice. The shark heads came with gills, which would undoubtedly aid in underwater movement. In the midst of these dramatic transformations, Estella chose a more conventional approach. She was the only one who adhered to the standard solution by using the head bubble curse. This spell encased her head in a bubble of air, allowing her to breathe underwater without altering her appearance drastically. Her choice was reminiscent of the enchanting mermaids, particularly the mermaid Hibiscus, known for their beauty and grace under the sea. Chapter 371. As all the young wizards entered the Black Lake, a hush fell over the area. This game was markedly different from the first. Although everyone was gathered at the Black Lake, the competition's venue, the underwater nature of the event meant that spectators on the surface could see nothing of the proceedings. For a moment, all anyone could do was crane their necks and gaze at the illusory live broadcast projected into the sky. It seemed almost absurd that stands were erected beside the Black Lake when all they could do was watch the competitors dive in. Even Bagman acknowledged this oddity, seizing the opportunity to praise Ethan Green. I've heard some say that the Tri-Wizard Tournament Organizing Committee made a mistake in allowing Mr. Green to join, fearing he would show favoritism towards Hogwarts. To me, that's the most ludicrous assertion. Just look at what Mr. Green has introduced. The most significant is this live broadcast system. His enthusiasm was palpable as he continued. Thanks to Mr. Green's live broadcast system, we can follow each contestant through the secret eye and witness their underwater endeavors via illusion. Can you imagine what this event would be like without such a system? The audience pondered Bagman's question, realizing the bleak alternative. Indeed, without the live broadcast, we'd be left sitting here, staring at the Black Lake, enduring the cold January wind for another hour with nothing to see. The audience, guided by Bagman's words, quickly grasped the absurdity of the situation. The person who had designed the game content seemed to realize his oversight, touching his long white beard with an embarrassed expression. It's clear that Mr. Green's live broadcast system has not just enhanced the Triwizard Tournament, it has saved this second game, Bagman proclaimed, echoing the sentiment of the spectators. So, let's pay tribute to the man who revolutionized the Triwizard Tournament. 3 cheers for Mr. Green. The crowd erupted in cheers, praising Ethan, who stood and waved in acknowledgement. However, not everyone was pleased with this display of admiration. Some young wizards from pure-blood families and Moody, seated among the teachers, could hardly bear the sight. "Bah, what a disgrace," Moody muttered under his breath, his gaze dark and contemptuous. "The Ministry of Magic officials and these young wizards are all pandering. What has the world come to? Indeed, only a true master can restore our former glory," he thought, his words filled with ominous undertones. Yet, the disdain from a few could not dampen the general admiration for Ethan or hinder the game's progress. Bagman, undeterred by the undercurrents of dissent, resumed his commentary with vigor. "Let's turn our attention back to the live broadcast. Our champions are now fully submerged." He pointed towards the illusion, updating the spectators on the competition's status. "Among all the champions, Miss Granger is making the most progress. She has found the correct direction and is heading towards the deeper parts of the lake." The challenges the champions faced in the icy waters of the Black Lake in early January were daunting. Beyond the merpeople and their guards, the lake's frigid temperatures posed a significant threat, steadily draining their limited stamina. Hermione, transformed into a half-water elemental, was the exception. The others, realizing the severity of their situation, swam desperately towards the lake's center, unwilling to waste a moment. The vastness of the Black Lake meant they also had to allocate precious time to locate the merpeople's village, with the clock ticking ever more urgently. From Hermione's perspective, the urgency was palpable as she navigated the chilling depths, her transformation giving her a unique advantage in the harsh conditions. The bottom of the Black Lake presented a peculiar and menacing landscape. At this time, the weather was overcast, with dark clouds obscuring the sun, casting an already dim light. The visibility in the murky waters of the Black Lake was notably low, allowing for clarity only within a 10-meter radius. Beyond this, the surroundings faded into darkness and obscurity, seemingly harboring numerous eerie black shadows. Some of these shadows were massive, looming in Hermione's field of vision like colossal beasts lurking in the shadows, ready to pounce at any moment. Further into the depths, a faint green glow emitted a ghostly light, reminiscent of phosphorescence flickering in the night, adding to the chilling atmosphere. This scene, akin to a ghostly realm with the mythical city of Arlaia lying ahead, instilled fear in the audience watching through the live broadcast. However, Hermione remained unfazed by her surroundings. This was largely because Ethan had previously guided her and Fleur through the Black Lake's depths during their special training, revealing that the distant shadows were not monsters, but merely large rocks or submerged trees. The real threat in the lake was the giant squid, which typically did not venture into the shallower areas. Moreover, the mysterious green lights were not spectral flames or sea monster eyes, but emanated from the Slytherin common room. Hermione had already committed the route to the mermaid village to memory, and confidently swam in the correct direction, followed closely by Fleur. Despite her calm demeanor, Fleur's transformation into a mermaid had a drawback. She was not resistant to cold. To expedite their mission, she rapidly fanned her fishtail. Crumb, hailing from the cold climes of Durmstrang in northern Europe, was not as bothered by the cold as Fleur. Winter swimming was almost a routine for him. However, his challenge lay in his unfamiliarity with the mermaid tribe's location, despite his prior training in the Black Lake. As he searched for the way, he also kept an eye out for Hermione. Although she had a boyfriend, Ethan was not present. Unfortunately for Crumb, he had underestimated Hermione's increased swimming speed. He could still catch glimpses of Fleur's fishtail, but was far behind Hermione. From the high platform, Bagman exclaimed in shock as Miss Dumont's head bubble curse was disrupted by a Grindylow during a skirmish. Although she quickly restored the bubble, she had already inhaled a significant amount of water. The question of her endurance hung in the air. The young wizards in the stands sympathized with Estella's misfortune, realizing why most competitors preferred the straightforward head bubble curse over more complex transformation spells. Except for Hermione and Fleur, the other competitors seemed disoriented in the Black Lake, moving erratically and facing numerous perils. Despite choosing the correct path, Hermione and Fleur were not guaranteed success. The Black Lake concealed various dangers, with Grindylows being merely the beginning. The situation was exacerbated by Crouch Jr.'s actions the previous day, as he had infused the lake with madness potions. These were not ordinary concoctions, but enhanced versions supplied by the Dark Lord and his Death Eaters, making the Black Lake even more perilous than usual. Ethan watched the illusion projection of Polyakov intently, witnessing his first encounter with a group of frenzied Grindylows. Ethan encountered a group of Murlocs wielding harpoons and eventually found himself at the Black Lake. There, he met the giant squid, the formidable boss of the game. He was pursued by its massive tentacles, desperately trying to escape. Ethan couldn't help but chuckle at his misfortune. How unlucky must one be to encounter all three conventional monsters in one go? He realized he must have appeared too timid, always knowing when to flee, while the menacing shark seemed to be on a futile hunt. Ethan noticed Karkaroff's face darken once more, and could only silently offer his condolences for a brief moment before turning his attention to Hermione's progress. By this time, Hermione had successfully reached the bottom of the Black Lake, a deep and expansive body of water teeming with life. Schools of fish darted among the aquatic plants Ike's swift silver arrows, while the plants themselves swayed gently as if greeting each visitor. The lake floor was littered with a staggering number of shells, a testament to the rich biodiversity of the lake. Collecting shells near the lake's edge was a beloved pastime for many young wizards, and the aquatic bounty of the lake served as an important food source for Hogwarts. Simply casting a net could yield a bountiful harvest. The lake also served as a protected reserve for mermaids, established by the Ministry of Magic not because of its resources, but rather, the presence of mermaids brought life and vibrancy to the vast waters. Mermaids, an intelligent and formidable race, possessed unique appearances and lifestyles. Their tall, half-fish, half-human forms allowed them to navigate the waters with ease. Their skin, a curious blend of dark green and iron gray, seemed to merge with the lake's hues. Despite their sharp teeth and intimidating appearance, mermaids were far from the brutal creatures of myth. Instead, they boasted a rich culture and lifestyle, engaging in agriculture and herding beneath the waves. They cultivated underwater fields and pastures, planting various aquatic plants and tending to schools of fish and shrimp. The mermaid dwellings, peculiar stone structures, dotted the lake bed, offering glimpses into their unique architectural style. Hermione, propelled by the water's current, explored the depths of the Black Lake, marveling at the mermaids' cultivated fields and homes nestled among the lush aquatic flora. She encountered mermaid herders, guiding their aquatic flocks with long forks through the underwater meadows. This exploration offered the young wizards in the audience a rare glimpse into the mermaid ecology, eliciting admiration and awe. Ethan realized that without his live broadcast system, many would never have the chance to witness such wonders. This first-hand experience would undoubtedly enrich their understanding of mermaids, far surpassing any classroom lesson. From a human perspective, Ethan had to acknowledge the mermaids' exceptional stewardship of the Black Lake. The scene painted Hermione as a half-water elemental, a testament to the magical harmony between the mermaids and their aquatic realm. Chapter 372. As Hermione advanced underwater, her streak of good luck came to an end when trouble found her. While swimming, a dark creature emerged from the aquatic plants ahead, its sharp claws reaching out, aiming to hook Hermione's ankles. Unnoticed by Hermione, the audience, viewing through magical means, grew anxious for her. However, before the claws could graze her skin, a dazzling red light struck, blasting the creature away. Although Hermione hadn't seen the attacker, her semi-water elemental state heightened her sensitivity to the surrounding water flow, allowing her to detect the anomaly before any contact was made. A sharp, painful wail echoed through the black lake as the creature retreated into the water and vanished. "It's a Grindylow," Hermione muttered, sheathing her wand without pursuing the creature. Grindylows are vile, green water monsters with long, sharp-fingered hands and a lower body resembling an octopus, complete with tentacles. These creatures typically hide in dense aquatic vegetation, waiting to ambush unsuspecting prey, which they then drag into the depths to devour at their leisure. Despite their dangerous nature, Grindylows possess low intelligence and lack the mercy of merpeople, having been domesticated by them to serve as guardians and shepherds. Professor Lupin had thoroughly covered Grindylows in the previous year, explaining that any wizard 3rd grade or above could fend them off with a simple spell. However, Hermione knew better than to underestimate them, especially when they attacked in numbers. After fending off several Grindylow attacks and incapacitating 2 merpeople, Hermione emerged from the seaweed forest, nearing the merpeople village. She thought her troubles were over until she encountered a large group of Grindylows launching an assault. How could there be such a large group attacking wizards? What do the merpeople feed them? Hermione pondered, recalling Ethan's explanation of the Black Lake's ecosystem. The merpeople, allies in the Triwizard Tournament, were tasked with moderating the challenges, ensuring they were neither lethal nor overly difficult for the contestants. Yet, the aggressive behavior of this Grindylow swarm was unusual. Could this be the effect of the madness potion Crouch Jr. added, as Dumbledore mentioned? Hermione speculated. Regardless of the cause, her immediate concern was dealing with the threat before her. Focused and determined, she didn't waste a moment looking up. The red light from her wand pierced through the water as she cast Thunderbolt Explosion. Opting for the explosive curse over the more potent fireball, Hermione knew its effectiveness underwater. The spell, though slower and more visible in the aquatic environment, was perfect against the mindless Grindylows. The red light found its mark, and a thunderous explosion rocked the group. The nearest Grindylows were caught in the blast, showcasing Hermione's strategic choice in handling the underwater menace. The surrounding Grindylows were staggered by the shockwave, thrown into a state of confusion. The minced meat and Grindylow's green blood clouded a small area, painting a gruesome scene that nearly made Hermione vomit on the spot. She had hoped the terrifying sight would deter these monsters, but the Grindylows, undeterred by the sight of their dismembered compatriots, continued their assault on Hermione. "It's really endless," Hermione muttered, her brow furrowed. With a wave of her wand, invisible magic surged forward. Suddenly, a small area of water in front of her churned as if gripped by an unseen force, and several Grindylows were crushed into a pulp, their bones shattered. Hermione had mastered the underwater spell, Hydraulic Sphere, specifically for this competition. This level 2 spell consumed far less magical power than Fireball or Explosive Curse, yet its effect at that moment surpassed even the explosive spells. Despite this, the surrounding Grindylows remained unfazed and continued their attack. Realizing the ineffectiveness of her initial deter, Hermione no longer held back. In just 10 seconds, she cast Water Pressure Sphere more than 8 times against the enemy group. It was as if an invisible giant was methodically crushing ants to death. Each turbulent wave signified the gruesome end of several Grindylows. In a short span, Hermione had eradicated all the Grindylows. The dark green remains were scattered by the water currents stirred up by the spell, muddying the clear water. After vanquishing her foes, Hermione finally allowed herself a moment of relief before succumbing to nausea. Unlike Cirilla, who had been accustomed to life and death from a young age, Hermione, despite Ethan's rigorous training, had never faced such raw carnage. She knew that if the Grindylows' blood had been red, the sight would have been unbearable, possibly haunting her with nightmares. The audience, comprised of young wizards, was equally stunned by the brutality of the scene. Even the referees frowned, acknowledging the excessive difficulty of the task. Mrs. Maxim and Karkaroff, in particular, were deeply concerned, aware that their champions might not have coped with such peril. They glanced at Dumbledore, hoping he would intervene, given that it was his student facing the ordeal. Dumbledore, however, merely pursed his lips, feigning surprise and concern, without calling a halt to the challenge. Ethan observed Dumbledore's act with a cold detachment, recognizing the headmaster's tacit approval of the lake's dangerous conditions as a result of his laissez-faire attitude. Finally, Karkaroff, unable to maintain his composure, voiced his concerns. "Do you think the challenges in the Black Lake are a bit too dangerous?" "Indeed, I thought so too," Dumbledore replied, nodding thoughtfully, as if carefully considering the matter. "But fortunately, it's still within the range that the champions can handle. If it were any more dangerous, I would have stopped the game." Karkaroff inwardly cursed, frustrated by Dumbledore's insinuation that the challenge was only manageable for Hogwarts' champions. Despite his anger, he found himself in a position where he could only attempt to coax Ethan Green into withdrawing. Little did he know, Hermione Granger would once again emerge as a formidable contender. The question of how Hogwarts managed to nurture so many talented young wizards was on everyone's mind. When Karkaroff's test proved ineffective, Mrs. Maxim sighed in resignation and decided to be forthright. "Let me be clear. The level of danger in the Black Lake currently exceeds what our champions are equipped to handle. Not everyone possesses the talent of Miss Granger. I believe the difficulty of this task is somewhat excessive, which unfairly disadvantages our champions." Dumbledore responded with his characteristic calm. The situation Miss Granger faced was an exception. In reality, the dangers each participant encounters in the Black Lake are unpredictable. Luck, too, plays a role in strength, does it not? "But what if a champion faces a peril they cannot overcome?" Mrs. Maxim pressed, concern evident in her voice. "If other champions encounter such dangers, they might not survive long enough for rescue." It was Ethan who addressed her concerns. "Do not worry, Mrs. Maxim. I assure you that our safety measures are more than capable of ensuring the champion's safe return should they find themselves in peril." "And on what do you base this assurance?" Mrs. Maxim's voice rose in skepticism. "On those mermaids? Or perhaps you plan to intervene personally. I would find that more believable if it were you or Dumbledore." Ethan shook his head, dismissing the idea. "There's no need for either the headmaster or myself to intervene. Do you recall the security measures I mentioned before? With her assistance, even if Voldemort himself were to act, she could guarantee the champion's safety." Dumbledore cast Ethan an unexpected glance upon hearing his words. Karkaroff, visibly disturbed, clutched his arm and shuddered at the mention of that name. Mrs. Maxim, still skeptical, questioned Ned, who, besides Dumbledore, could possibly contend with such a threat. "You'll see in time," Ethan replied, waving off further inquiries with a nonchalant gesture. Despite their lingering doubts, Karkaroff and Mrs. Maxim chose to trust in Ethan's confidence, refraining from further questions. The narrative then shifts to introduce the character of Hay Queeman, a half-water elemental. Chapter 373, The Mermaid Village. Hermione's recent encounter with the Grindylow group, which she had decisively defeated, seemed to have cleared the area of any immediate threats. As a result, she encountered no further obstacles for a while. It wasn't long before she was drawn in by a soft, sweet melody that carried a touch of melancholy. Accompanied by a whistling and buzzing sound, it reminded her of the song contained within the Golden Egg, yet it also bore a resemblance to the haunting calls of whales. Hermione quickly deduced that she was hearing the song of the mermaids, indicating that she was near their village. As she ventured further, Hermione stumbled upon a quaint mermaid village, characterized by its rough stone dwellings, each speckled with algae. The deeper she went, the more numerous these dwellings became. From a distance, she could see the village square, at the center of which stood a crude statue of a mermaid, carved from a massive stone. Tied to the tail of this statue were 6 individuals who appeared to be in a deep slumber, their heads drooping and thin streams of bubbles escaping their mouths. Approaching the square, Hermione noticed the mermaid guards springing into action. It was clear they were only tasked with guarding the hostages and not with confronting warriors. Nevertheless, they brandished shining steel forks and formed a semicircle around Hermione, emitting intimidating roars. Despite facing a formidable group of mermaids, Hermione didn't show any signs of backing down. She retrieved an octopus tentacle from her waterproof bag, tossed it before her, and swiftly cast a spell. Black tentacles. The tentacle dissolved instantly, transforming into a mass of elastic black tentacles, each 3 to 4 meters in length. These tentacles writhed about, ensnaring several mermaid guards and forcing the others to retreat. Just as Hermione braced herself for a more intense confrontation, she was surprised to see the remaining mermaids displaying expressions of fear. They screamed, discarded their weapons, and fled in disarray. This reaction brought Hermione a sense of relief, as it seemed the mermaids were more fearful of wizards than she had anticipated. Even the brief courage they had mustered under the influence of the madness potion dissipated when faced with Hermione's display of magic. This incident underscored the complex relationship between mermaids and wizards. Despite the bravado shown by mermaids and centaurs in confronting the Ministry of Magic, rejecting the classification alongside vampires and banshees due to their disdain for being labeled as beasts, their defiance only went so far. Historically, wizards have always looked down upon mermaids, much like how muggles, who share the same origins but lack magical abilities, look down upon wizards. This disdain has led to centuries of callous treatment towards non-human races, a fact symbolized by the derogatory statues found within the Ministry of Magic. The mistreatment of non-human races by wizards has been a long-standing issue, only somewhat mitigated when the remaining populations of centaurs, mermaids, and other creatures were placed in protected areas. This change was not so much a result of wizards' conscience, but rather a combination of the persistent resistance of these races, which eventually made an impact, and a begrudging sense of mutual sympathy among wizards. This shift in attitude was further solidified with the enactment of the International Statute. In the era of the International Statute of Secrecy, wizards gradually came to realize that the burgeoning Muggle industry and their relentless colonization were putting excessive pressure on the planet. They noticed that the living spaces for wizards and non-human races were shrinking due to Muggle expansion. It dawned on them that they shared common interests with these non-human races, which far outweighed their differences. As a result, wizards began to change their attitudes towards non-human races, offering them better treatment. However, for the mermaids, memories of fear and pain were still fresh. This fear was deeply ingrained in their DNA, and it was this that Hermione exploited with a bit of magic to scare them away, conserving her energy in the process. She quickly reached Ginny and embraced her. With a swift flick of her wand, the ropes binding Ginny loosened and fell to the ground. Hermione then lifted Ginny in a princess carry, her fiery red hair cascading down Hermione's arms, indicating she was in good condition. Hermione's gaze then lingered on Ronnie, feeling a sense of familiarity not just from her Weasley features, but something in her movements and demeanor. Despite her efforts, Hermione couldn't place where she had seen her before and decided to let the thought go. She then kicked off towards the lake's surface, finding it much easier to return to shore than to locate the mermaid village in the Black Lake's depths. The water propelled Hermione forward, even as she carried Ginny. In less than 5 minutes, they emerged from the water. The crowd, momentarily silent, erupted into cheers. Only 29 minutes had passed of the allotted hour, and Hermione had already completed the task. I knew Hermione would be the first to come out. She is the best, worthy of being the chairman of our Urshi Society, Bagman exclaimed, impressed by Hermione's speed despite the underwater challenges, affirming her top position from the last round. The students applauded fervently, with Gryffindor House leading chants of "Granger!" The cheers spread across the field, everyone shouting her name in unison. Ethan, taking the initiative, helped the girls from the water to the shore before Madame Pomfrey could intervene. Hermione was in excellent condition, thanks to the Heart of Flowing Water spell, still spirited after her time in the Black Lake. Ginny, however, was in a worse state, her wet hair dripping and her face pale from the cold. Hermione, realizing her oversight, quickly dried Ginny with a spell, evaporating the moisture from her body and hair. Ethan wrapped Ginny in a thick blanket, then took her cold hands in his, rubbing them to warm them before placing them against his warm chest. Ginny's eyelashes fluttered slightly as she nestled closer into his warmth. "Sorry, I forgot about this," Hermione said, feeling a bit guilty for overlooking the cold's effect on Ginny. The girl gradually opened her bright brown eyes and saw Ethan at first sight. A flash of surprise crossed her pale face as her eyes met Ethan's. Noticing her pitiful appearance, he couldn't resist reaching out to touch her cheek. Ginny turned her head, rubbing gently into the warmth of the boy's palm. "Thank you, Ethan," the girl said subconsciously. Hey, I'm still here," Hermione interjected, placing her hands on her hips and looking at Ethan with a trace of dissatisfaction. "How does this make him the hero who saves the beauty, and me, merely an outsider?" "Don't be fooled by this stinky man, Ginny. I was the one who rescued you from the mermaids," Hermione protested. "Oh, sorry, Hermione. Thank you for saving me from underwater," Ginny replied with a smile, though she nestled closer into Ethan's arms. "That's more like it," Hermione huffed, then turned to Ethan. He shook his head at her. "You've got it completely backward. You should be thanking Ginny for being your hostage in this cold weather," he teased, looking down at the girl in his arms. "Right, Ginny?" Ginny offered a weak smile, but remained silent. Yes, I should thank Ginny. Thank you, Ginny," Hermione conceded, her hands still on her hips and her lips curled in a whisper. "You know how to challenge me." Noticing Ethan's gaze, she added with dissatisfaction, "I've worked so hard. Why don't you put a blanket on me?" "Will the blanket wash itself for free?" Ethan retorted, shaking his head. "Do you hear what you're saying?" Hermione, who possesses a partial affinity for water, doesn't feel the cold in the same way others do. She was merely acting coquettishly. Nevertheless, Ethan obliged her request. He used magic to dispel Hermione's water-heart state and draped a blanket over her. Noticing her still dissatisfied gaze, Ethan hesitated before pulling her into his arms, sharing his body warmth. Hermione blushed, surprised by Ethan's boldness in front of everyone, yet a part of her felt joy. At that moment, Madame Pomfrey arrived, taking Ginny and Hermione from Ethan's embrace. Hermione quickly stepped out of his arms, but Ginny was visibly reluctant to leave. After a brief struggle, she finally let go. Madame Pomfrey then administered a hot potion to both girls, causing steam to emanate from their ears. She couldn't help but complain to Ethan, Dumbledore shouldn't allow such dangerous events in the Triwizard Tournament. What if these children had drowned? So dangerous! Ethan listened to Madame Pomfrey's complaints with a sense of helplessness. She had expressed similar concerns after the last task involving a fire dragon. Madame Pomfrey opposed all dangerous sports and would ban Quidditch for the young wizards if she could. After Ginny and Hermione were taken away by Madame Pomfrey, Ethan's attention returned to the tournament. As the new month arrives, I kindly ask for your support through custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. Your votes are incredibly important to me. Thank you. Chapter 3374. After Hermione's swift victory elicited a burst of cheers, the entire audience fell into a hushed silence once more. Hermione's ability to finish the task well before the halfway mark led many spectators to significantly underestimate the challenge of the competition and overestimate the average prowess of the contestants. They had anticipated witnessing a succession of warriors triumphantly completing their tasks one after another. However, reality soon doused their expectations with a cold splash of truth, revealing their overestimations. Hermione's rapid completion was a testament to her exceptional strength, not an indication of the task's simplicity. Not every contestant was equipped to navigate the same perils. The calm was abruptly shattered by Bagman's exclamation, jolting everyone's attention back to the competition. "Oh no! Durmstrang's top-seeded contestant, Crumb, has encountered a hidden adversary in the Black Lake, the legendary horse-shaped water monster. This creature is among the most perilous magical beings residing in the lake." Instantly, all eyes turned to Crumb's live broadcast. On screen, a figure with a shark's head was seen confronting a monstrous entity with the torso of a horse and the lower body of a fish. Ethan, quick to respond, handed an open copy of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them to Bagman. This wasn't Ethan's first time providing Bagman with material for his commentary. The horse-shaped water monster is an exceedingly dangerous creature, classified with a danger level of XXXXX, Bagman began, reading from the book Ethan provided. These creatures are found in the underworld in Ireland, capable of assuming various forms. However, they most commonly appear as horses, using broadleaf cattails for a mane. In this guise, they lure unsuspecting individuals to mount them, only to dive deep into the nearest river or lake, consuming the rider until their entrails float to the surface. He paused before continuing. Another form favored by the water monster is that of a sea snake. The largest known specimen resides in Loch Ness, Scotland, maintaining its guise as a giant sea snake for centuries. The effective method to subdue an equus is to employ the placement spell to affix a bridle onto its head. Once bridled, it becomes docile and obedient, posing no further threat. However, one must not release it carelessly, as it harbors grudges and is known to curse those who have wronged it. Dumbledore, observing the young wizards in the audience, absorbing the explanation, smiled with satisfaction. This was the educational essence of the Triwizard Tournament. Regrettably, Krum, submerged in the lake, was beyond the reach of Bagman's informative commentary. Encountering the horse-shaped water monster had thrown Krum into a state of panic. He had been navigating the murky depths of the Black Lake for what felt like an eternity, repeatedly scaring off Grindylows with his fearsome shark's head. Despite his efforts, he had failed to locate the mermaid village. Spotting someone carrying another person towards the water's surface in the distance, Krum realized with a sinking heart that another contestant had already completed the task, intensifying the pressure on him. Time, it seemed, was slipping away far too quickly. Intent on confronting the immediate threat, Krum attempted to cast a powerful, dark spell, Torn Apart. However, he momentarily forgot that his current form, that of a shark, prevented him from articulating the spell properly. The horse-shaped water monster, provoked by Krum's gesture, charged at him with full force. Perhaps driven by the instincts of his shark form, or simply acting on impulse, Krum decided to engage the monster with his fists. But lacking the physical attributes of a real shark, he was at a significant disadvantage in underwater combat. The water monster, stronger, faster, and more agile, quickly overpowered him. Ethan's face was swollen. If he hadn't acted quickly in the emergency, biting the water monster with his shark teeth and then flaying while the creature was in pain, he might have been the first contestant to be eliminated from the competition. There's something wrong with this game. Why do only our school's champions encounter this monster? Karkaroff complained angrily upon seeing this. Madame Maxime, who had initially agreed with Karkaroff that the second task was too dangerous and unfair for their champions, this time, before Dumbledore could respond, took it upon herself to address Karkaroff's concerns. There's nothing we can do about it, Igor. As Dumbledore mentioned, everyone's experience in the Black Lake is unique. It's simply unfortunate luck on your part. Stop complaining. Easy for you to say when you're not the one suffering, Karkaroff retorted, turning to Madame Maxime. He pointed at another screen, raising his voice in frustration. Anyway, it's not your students who are facing bad luck. How come the Beauxbatons champions can safely reach the mermaid village, while Durmstrang's champions are nearly getting lost? He was referring to the live broadcast showcasing Fleur's progress. After hearing this, Madame Maxime sighed, acknowledging the truth in his words, and remarked, "Perhaps such is life." Fleur's successful arrival at the mermaid village was not a matter of luck. After discovering that Ethan had provided Hermione with a detailed map of the Black Lake, Fleur quickly sought Ethan out. They struck a mutually beneficial deal. Ethan provided her with a copy of the map, and in return, she allowed him a certain liberty. This exchange increased her chances of winning, while Ethan indulged his desires. However, the aftermath of this transaction revealed it to be a clear victory for Fleur. Ethan believed he was satisfying his greed, but was Fleur truly at a disadvantage? In reality, the transaction's supposed purpose for Fleur, acquiring the map, was merely a facade. She was baiting the law, playing the role of prey when she was actually the hunter. Ethan, experienced as he was completely outmaneuvered by her. Fleur's swift arrival at the mermaid village was not only due to her knowledge of the route, but also because she faced fewer attacks along the way. Remarkably, no Grindylows assaulted her upon entering the water. The creatures, typically aggressive towards champions, chose to avoid her, likely mistaking her for a mermaid due to her appearance. If Fleur's memory had been as sharp as Hermione's, allowing her to navigate without confusion, she might have reached the mermaid village alongside Hermione. However, she was not too late. By the time she arrived, Hermione had already cleared the mermaid square of its inhabitants, leaving only a few mermaids restrained by black tentacles and suspended in the square's center. The sight of these tentacles was enough to terrify any approaching mermaid, who would then hide behind buildings, too scared to venture closer. Even in Hermione's absence, the fear she instilled remained. Upon entering the mermaid square, Fleur immediately recognized the black tentacles. Ethan had demonstrated this spell during their special training, and Fleur remembered it well, referring to it as a roguelike spell. Among the champions, only Hermione could wield black tentacles. It seems Granger has already been here, Fleur thought, not allowing herself to feel too disappointed. She and Hermione had previously teamed up against the fire dragon and had undergone special training together. Under Ethan, she had also participated in the courses offered by the Erudite Society. She was well aware of Hermione's capabilities and acknowledged that there was no disgrace in being outperformed by her. Seizing the opportunity presented by the menacing black tentacles, Fleur swiftly moved beneath the statue to rescue her sister, Gabrielle. Observing this peculiar fish, which bore a striking resemblance to them, yet featured a considerably less attractive face, the merpeople from afar were filled with curiosity. They were eager to interact and learn more about this newcomer, but were deterred by the intimidating presence of the black tentacles, leaving them no choice but to watch from a distance as the group departed. The scene depicted the mermaid Hibiscus in a light that sparked intrigue among the merpeople. Chapter 375. After successfully leaving the mermaid village with Gabrielle, Fleur had initially thought she could escort her sister safely to the shore and complete the race without further incident. However, the greatest challenge emerged when victory seemed within reach. Not long after they resumed swimming, Fleur spotted a peculiar figure approaching from the distance. It soon became clear that this figure bore a shark's head, its jaws snapping open and closed, revealing glimpses of torn flesh and dirty blood, exuding a menacing aura. Fleur couldn't identify the creature, but she knew well enough that it resembled the transformation of a Durmstrang champion into a shark. The creature before her was an adversary. Although Fleur was reluctant to engage in underwater combat, Gabrielle's presence compelled her to stand in defense. Drawing her wand, Fleur prepared for confrontation. To her surprise, upon noticing Fleur, the shark-headed figure quickly changed course and retreated. Fleur was puzzled. Durmstrang was renowned for its dark magic, and its students were adept at combat. Why then did this opponent flee without even attempting a fight? Her question was soon answered when she noticed a massive sea snake slithering through the aquatic plants in the distance, launching an attack. It became apparent that the Durmstrang champion had been fleeing from this creature, not from Fleur. Unfortunately, with Gabrielle by her side, fleeing was not an option for Fleur. Her grip on her wand tightened instinctively. At the judge's table, Karkaroff couldn't help but express his delight, while Mrs. Maxime criticized Krumm's tactics as despicable. Karkaroff countered, arguing that it was a display of strategic wisdom. The debate between the two sides escalated. Meanwhile, Harry, another Hogwarts champion, had a relatively smooth start upon entering the lake. Thanks to Ethan's special training, Harry was well acquainted with the Black Lake. As he dived, he was enveloped by a dark, eerie silence, with visibility limited to a mere 10 feet around him. The murky waters, intertwined with dark aquatic plants and dotted with shimmering stones, resembled a starlit night sky. Deeper into the lake, Harry encountered a swarm of Grindylows. Recalling Professor Lupin's lessons and his own encounter with one during the final exam, Harry braced himself for a confrontation. However, to his surprise, the Grindylows ignored him, focusing instead on searching the lake for other potential threats. What luck, Harry thought, relieved yet puzzled by their indifference. Reflecting on his day, Harry considered his fortune. Earlier, he had been stopped by Professor Moody, who shared memories of fighting alongside Harry's father, James Potter. Despite the encouragement, Harry was left feeling uncomfortable due to Moody's greasy hands, which left a residue Harry couldn't wash off before the competition. Despite this discomfort, Harry's luck seemed to hold, especially after witnessing the Grindylows' unexpected disinterest. Grindelwald was frantically attacking several other warriors from a distance. Ethan felt as if he had consumed the legendary elixir of good fortune, with everything unfolding as smoothly as in a dream. There's a saying that blessings are unparalleled and misfortunes never come singly, yet this principle seemed to lose its effect on Ethan. When he was unsure of which direction to swim, Moaning Myrtle appeared before him. She fluttered in front of him, peering through her thick, pearl-colored lenses, giggling and pointing the way. After thanking her, Ethan continued to swim forward. Swimming for less than 20 minutes, Ethan encountered many mermaids who, like those under Grindelwald's influence, ignored him. Recalling that the hostages were tied up in the mermaid village, he deduced that the direction with the most mermaids likely led to the village. Following his intuition, Ethan swam forward. After several detours, he finally spotted a rough mermaid statue. However, the scene before him was unlike what he had anticipated. In the score, before the statue, there were no mermaids to be seen. The black tentacles summoned by Hermione had vanished, and the tied mermaids had escaped, yet the remaining mermaids still dared not approach the area. Suppressing his curiosity, Ethan slowly approached the statue and immediately spotted Ron's red hair floating in the lake. Overjoyed, he hurried over to rescue him. Only 4 hostages were tied there. Ginny and Gabrielle were not among them. Someone had obviously arrived before him and rescued them. Ethan wasn't surprised. In the previous challenge, Hermione and Fleur had been ahead of him. Moreover, he had undergone special training with Ethan before and was well aware of the capabilities of the 2 witches who had trained alongside him. Gently untying the rope around Ron, Ethan embraced him tightly. Gazing at the person who had transformed from his best friend, Ethan couldn't help but sniff, imagining he could detect a sweet fragrance even underwater. Ron's fiery red hair gently swayed with the water's movement, and his pale face couldn't conceal his natural beauty. His slightly closed eyelids and the delicate curve of his eyelashes added an indescribable beauty. Even the light freckles seemed as charming as elves, tempting Ethan to kiss his cheek. Ethan's head slowly leaned closer, drawn by Ron's beauty and unable to resist. However, he suddenly remembered the secret eye that had been following him and broadcasting live. Not wanting to engage in such an act publicly, he reluctantly stopped. He had never despised the device more than at that moment. Yet, through the live broadcast, the audience had already noticed his hesitation, expressing regret that they couldn't witness the anticipated dramatic scene. Meanwhile, Malfoy could no longer contain his frustration and began to curse, infuriated at the near kiss between Ethan and his goddess. Ethan and Ginny were dumbfounded. They were the only ones aware of the truth. Seeing Ethan about to kiss Ron, they couldn't contain their shock. "No way, Ethan, it's true," Ethan exclaimed. The idea of a warrior braving the dangers of the mermaid village to rescue his kidnapped sweetheart and then kissing her tenderly was indeed a beautifully intoxicating image. However, when Ginny realized the beautiful woman in Ethan's arms was actually her brother Ron, she felt nauseated and retched on the spot. Fortunately, Ethan and Ron didn't proceed with that final step, sparing Ginny further distress. Ethan felt nauseous, as if he was about to vomit out all of last night's midnight snack. "What's wrong, Ginny? Did you experience any side effects from being in the water for too long?" Madame Pomfrey, upon seeing this, immediately approached her with concern. She then turned to Dumbledore, voicing her complaints. The headmaster should not have allowed this Tri-Wizard tournament. Look at the state our young wizard is in. In the live broadcast, Harry, filled with regret, quickly picked up Ron and swam towards the shore. The camera captured a fleeting image of the mermaid hibiscus. Chapter 376. As the match approached the 40-minute mark, with 2/3 of the time already passed, Hermione remained the only one who had managed to rescue her hostage. At this juncture, Bagman heightened the suspense, addressing the audience from the stage with a grave tone. "Dear audience, I must share a harsh reality with you. According to the rules of this game, if the competitors fail to return with their treasures and loved ones within the allotted time, all hope is lost. Yes, the consequences may be dire for those not rescued in time." He insinuated that the hostages left underwater could face death, without stating it outright. This suggestion alarmed many of the younger wizards, causing them to stand, their faces etched with concern as they gazed anxiously at the lake. "Do you think the monsters will drag the hostages back down if time runs out?" a young wizard asked, his voice laced with fear. "Oh my gosh, they wouldn't really kill them, would they?" another whispered, trembling. "I've heard those mermaids are capable of eating humans," someone else added in a hushed tone. "It's impossible. With Dumbledore here, nothing bad will happen," an older wizard attempted to reassure the group. However, a counterpoint was quickly raised. "Don't forget, there have been fatalities in the Triwizard Tournament before." Amidst the growing concern, the lake's surface, previously calm, began to stir. A massive whirlpool formed at its center, the water churning loudly as if heralding the emergence of something or someone. All eyes were fixed on this spectacle, hearts racing in anticipation. Then, as the sunlight caught the silver glint on the water's surface, Fleur Delacour emerged, riding atop a majestic horse. The creature's hooves skimmed the water, sending up sprays, while its fishtail propelled Fleur swiftly forward. An iron cage was mounted on the horse's head, and Fleur, gripping the reins in one hand and holding Gabrielle in the other, resembled a valiant knight. Her silver hair billowed in the wind, and a confident smile graced her face, making her appear all the more radiant. "Incredible," Bagman exclaimed. "The second champion to return is Fleur Delacour." Unlike Crumb, who was pursued by the water monster, Fleur has managed to tame it, using it to her advantage. "This is the first time I've witnessed anyone ride a horse-shaped water monster." This remarkable feat reignited the excitement among the spectators, drawing cheers and admiration. "So impressive, Fleur. She's actually riding that water monster. This is absolutely amazing." The referees themselves stood to applaud Fleur's achievement. "You see, Igor," Madame Maxime said to Karkaroff with a hint of pride, "no amount of cunning can outmatch true strength. The water monster may have chased Crumb, but it was no match for Fleur." Karkaroff, unable to contain his disdain, retorted, "That's nothing. It's just like Granger from Hogwarts, always following Ethan Green's lead. Did you not see? That spell, Monster Hold, can only be learned from Ethan. Having the skill to learn from a master is a testament to Fleur's ability." Madame Maxime responded, unfazed by his criticism. "Yes, leveraging her Vila heritage to secure victory. How commendable," Karkaroff said sarcastically. Madame Maxime, however, remained proud. "Jealousy doesn't suit you, Igor. Your Crumb couldn't achieve what she did." As the two headmasters exchanged barbs, Dumbledore made his way to the shore, intrigued by the water monster. Observing Fleur, he complimented her. "What an excellent display of transfiguration, Miss Delacour." "The lace on your bridle is very artistic," Dumbledore remarked. "However, there's a slight issue. Once the water monster is freed, it will curse the person who restrained it, so don't release it carelessly." Then what should I do?" Fleur was visibly panicked. "Let me handle it." Ethan's voice emerged at the perfect moment, instilling a sense of reassurance in her. This assurance was something she couldn't even derive from Dumbledore. Et encircled the horse-shaped water monster, his gaze causing it to snort uneasily, much like a real horse would. "So, Fleur, would you like to have a horse-shaped water monster as a mount?" "You mean you want to help me tame it?" Fleur's surprise was evident. "Of course I do. Who wouldn't want a shape-shifting horse-shaped water monster as a mount? On land, it's the finest horse, and in water, it transforms into the best sea pony, capable of traveling unimpeded underwater. Such a mount is indeed very attractive." Ethan then turned to Dumbledore. "Principal, Fleur captured this horse-shaped water monster in a direct battle. Surely Hogwarts won't miss one water monster, right?" "Of course not," Dumbledore replied, his interest piqued by Ethan. "But in thousands of years, I've never heard of a wizard who could control a horse-shaped water monster for an extended period. Only the legendary mermaid kingdom of Atlantis is known to have a Kelpie cavalry. I'm eager to see how you plan to accomplish this. In fact, it's quite simple, Ethan said before extending his hand towards the restless water monster. He then used his psychic powers to penetrate its mind, distorting its thoughts with a suggestion spell, followed by a natural covenant. Despite being termed a water monster, it is essentially a magical creature that aligns with the power of nature, making it a suitable target for the druid's natural covenant. However, due to its strong hostility, Ethan had to use suggestion to twist its mind and force a covenant. You really succeeded. Fleur looked at Ethan in astonishment. I've truly tamed this water monster. She felt a connection with the creature, sensing that it would obey her will, always respond to her call, and fight for her. It's not over yet, Fleur, Ethan said, taking out his wand again and pointing it at the water monster's bridle. He cast a mounting spell, a first-level conjuration spell that, in this case, allowed the mount to be summoned at any time. Finally, Ethan transformed the horse's bridle into a small metal ring, which fell into Fleur's hands. The ring retained the lace pattern from the bridle and was engraved with the image of a horse-shaped water monster, resembling the one before her. Even after the bridle was removed, the water monster stayed obediently by Fleur's side, showing no intention of causing trouble. It appeared to be genuinely subdued. It's remarkable magic, Dumbledore observed, both amazed and slightly concerned. Ethan's use of powerful spiritual power and unfamiliar spells, reminiscent of soul-seizing, suggested a level of magic that Dumbledore, despite his vast knowledge, couldn't fully grasp. This unfamiliarity made him feel a loss of control. Ethan didn't care about the principal's scrutinizing gaze as he introduced the magical item to Fleur. With this, you won't have to worry about how to summon the water monster. No matter where you are, as long as you use this bridle, the water monster will come to you at any time. Thank you, Ethan, Fleur said as she carefully stored the hoop. Overwhelmed with gratitude, she gave Ethan a quick, cold hug and a wet kiss. Be careful. Don't catch a cold. Ethan shook his head gently and then waved his wand. The water vapor on Fleur and Gabrielle's bodies evaporated instantly. Simultaneously, 2 large blankets flew towards them and wrapped them snugly. Ethan then looked at the sleeping Gabrielle, gently picked her up, and cradled her in his arms. Turning to Fleur, he reassured her, "Don't worry, the sleeping curse will be lifted soon, and she will wake up." Fleur nodded slightly, her face showing signs of exhaustion. The nearly hour-long, high-intensity effort had drained her, and all she wanted was to rest. Without hesitation, she sat next to Ethan, rested her head gently on his arm, and snuggled into his embrace with Gabrielle, cherishing the hard-earned warmth. "What's my rank?" Fleur asked after taking a sip of the hot cocoa Ethan handed her. Despite being the second to rescue the hostages, the delay caused by the horse-shaped water monster made her anxious. "Don't worry, you're still in second place, only behind Hermione," Ethan reassured her gently. "There's a significant gap between you and the others. The little time you spent dealing with the water monster hasn't affected your results at all." His voice carried a hint of pride and relief. "That's good to hear," Fleur sighed in relief, looking at Ethan with affectionate eyes. "Thank you, Ethan. Your help played a big part in this." Fleur was well aware that her success was largely due to Ethan's special training. From trading underwater maps to teaching her how to transform into a mermaid and the monster holding technique for dealing with water monsters, Ethan had carefully selected and taught her these methods during their training sessions. The image of Mermaid Fleur lingered in their minds. Chapter 377. About 15 minutes after Fleur finished the race, Harry arrived at the shore, securing third place. He was greeted with cheers from the audience, sharing the moment with Ron. Moody, watching from the stands, initially felt a wave of relief at the sight. However, his expression quickly turned into a frown. Despite his extensive efforts, he was dismayed to find that he could only elevate Harry to third place. The plan had been costly, involving a significant expenditure of precious magical materials to concoct a potion that would incite madness among all creatures in the Black Lake. Unlike a contained body of water, the Black Lake is a vast, living expanse connected to the sea, where ordinary potions would quickly dilute. Achieving a concentration potent enough to affect the entire lake required an unimaginable amount of resources. A small vial of such a high-concentration madness potion could cost several gold galleons, yet they had poured an entire bucket into the lake. This expenditure was painful even during Voldemort's peak, let alone now, when he was yet to be resurrected and forced to hide, relying solely on the dwindling reserves of his loyalists without any means of replenishing them. The sole purpose of this extravagant expense was to ensure Harry Potter's victory in the Triwizard Tournament. After infiltrating Hogwarts and assuming Moody's identity as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, Crouch Jr. realized that Harry's skills alone would not suffice to secure him the championship. Despite Voldemort's reluctance to acknowledge it, the boy who had once defeated him was, in many ways, unremarkable. Harry was competent, of course, able to fly a broomstick, cast a Patronus charm, and proficient with Expelliarmus, his combat skills surpassing 95% of his peers from Crouch's time. However, in an era where Ethan Green had founded the Erudite Society, Harry's abilities might only exceed 70% of his young contemporaries. Crouch Jr. had to admit to Voldemort that Harry would need substantial assistance to win. They decided to take drastic measures, and the second task's chaos, caused by the enraged creatures of the Black Lake, was their strategy. They had hoped at least to give Harry a significant advantage, if not outright eliminate his competition. Yet, their plan backfired spectacularly. Hermione Granger, facing a horde of Grindylows, dispatched them with ease, displaying a level of prowess beyond her years. Even Crouch Jr. admitted he couldn't have matched her performance. The mermaids, too, were utterly ineffective, proving no match for the young witch's might. Fleur's performance, though not as astonishing as Hermione's, was still remarkable. She managed to subdue a water horse with just a few spells. Crouch Jr. was at a loss for how to report this failure to Voldemort. Their carefully laid trap, which had consumed so much of their resources, had failed to stop even two young witches who hadn't yet graduated. His gaze then shifted to Ethan Green, seated at the referee's bench. Ethan was the root of all these unforeseen challenges. Crouch Jr. couldn't fathom how a wizard so young could possess such extraordinary talent, surpassing even Voldemort and Dumbledore at his age. The most troubling part was that Ethan was not on their side. As a wizard deeply entrenched in pure-blood families, Crouch Jr. was acutely aware of the significance of Ethan's ascent. His remarkable accomplishments, one after another, severely challenged the pure-blood supremacy ideology within the wizarding world. Many half-blood wizards, who had previously aligned themselves with pure-blood families due to their staunch belief in this ideology, began to waver. This shift allowed the faction led by Jaina to expand its influence within the Ministry of Magic with relative ease. Ethan, in essence, became a symbol for advocates of blood equality. Has Merlin forsaken your pure-blood lineage? This question resonated among numerous pure-blood families, including the Crouches. This sentiment inadvertently bolstered Voldemort's resurrection plan, garnering unexpected support due to Ethan's influence. Initially, Crouch Jr. considered abandoning his plan to use the Triwizard Tournament to capture Harry, fearing Ethan's involvement. However, before any decision was made, the other participating schools proactively sought to exclude Ethan from the competition. This development allowed Crouch Jr. to proceed with his original plan. Yet, Ethan still emerged as a significant variable in the tournament. Without directly participating, he influenced the competition through a Muggle witch he had trained, who demonstrated exceptional prowess, and a half-Vila witch who, in Crouch Jr.'s view, used her allure to gain extraordinary abilities. The tournament, expected to showcase the talents of pure-blood wizards like Krum, Polyakov, and Estella, was instead dominated by individuals representing the very groups purebloods most discriminated against. This turn of events was intolerable to Crouch. Casting a malevolent glance at Ethan on the referee's bench and glaring at Hermione and Fleur in the players' dugout, Crouch limped out of the auditorium under the guise of needing the restroom. With Harry unable to outperform Hermione and Fleur in the second task, Crouch Jr. decided to temporarily abandon his plan, deeming them fortunate. He resolved to focus on eliminating them in the subsequent task. Despite their pure-blood status, Crouch Jr. was determined to remove the remaining competitors to ensure they wouldn't hinder Harry's performance in the next task. "Sorry, you wretches. Who put you in the way of the Master? For the great cause of the Master's resurrection, please sacrifice yourselves," Crouch Jr. muttered as he donned a special waterproof invisibility cloak. This cloak, a necessity due to Ethan's invention of a secret live broadcast system, was a source of resentment for Crouch Jr. The cost of an invisibility cloak was already steep, but a waterproof version was exorbitantly priced, consuming most of his savings. Clutching a crystal potion bottle, Crouch Jr. made his way to a secluded spot far from the audience and plunged into the Black Lake, heading towards the cave inhabited by the giant squid. He had previously scouted the lake's depths, with the giant squid serving as a contingency plan to prevent any mishaps. Unfortunately, the squid's inability to distinguish friend from foe rendered it unusable until the last moment. Harry left. "Without him, you two annoying witches wouldn't stand a chance," Little Crouch mused to himself. Utilizing his invisibility cloak, he effortlessly approached the giant squid, then stealthily uncorked the crystal bottle and poured its contents into the creature's mouth. After completing his task, Little Crouch swam away as quickly as he could. Despite the risk of the water flow revealing his position, he did not hesitate. He was acutely aware of the potion's potent effects contained within the crystal bottle and knew he had to escape before it was too late. Behind him, the giant squid's eyes turned bloodshot, signaling the onset of the potion's effects. Unbeknownst to the three warriors still in the lake, a significant threat was looming. Update. Additional update. The new month has arrived, and I kindly request your support through custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, reviews, and rewards. Your votes are particularly important to me as the author. Please, if you have any to spare, consider giving them to me. Your support means everything. Chapter 378. The madness potion that Crouch had introduced into the Black Lake still exerted some influence. Hindered by the frenzied Grindylows, the progress of the remaining three champions in the water was significantly impeded. It wasn't until 10 minutes after Harry had successfully reached the shore that Beauxbaton's champion, Estella Dumont, managed to arrive at the Merpeople village, marking her the fourth to do so. By this time, the initial guards of the village, still wary from Hermione's formidable magic, had begun their patrols around the village square once more. Yet, when they noticed Estella, none dared to intercept her. The reason was simple. The lingering fear from earlier encounters still affected them. Thus, Estella was able to approach the statue and retrieve her hostage without any obstacles. For the first time, she felt her journey through the Black Lake was becoming easier. There were no Grindylows, no leeches, and no traps hidden among the water plants. Only the gentle flow of water and beams of sunlight filtering through, creating a mesmerizing effect due to the Tyndall phenomenon. Estella found herself appreciating the beauty of the Black Lake's depths. However, this serene moment was short-lived. Suddenly, without warning, she felt something grasp her ankle. Twisting around, she saw a massive purple-red tentacle tightly wound around her leg, emerging from the dark depths. Soon after, two more tentacles appeared, menacingly reaching for her. From the direction of these tentacles, a huge dark shadow loomed. "It's the giant squid of the Black Lake," Estella realized immediately. She had researched the Black Lake prior to the tournament and had even inquired about the giant squid from Hogwarts students. According to them, the giant squid was a docile creature, often seen basking in the shallows on sunny days, allowing students to tickle its tentacles. Earlier in the year, it had even rescued a student who had accidentally fallen into the lake. To everyone at Hogwarts, the giant squid was known as a friendly entity. Why then was it attacking her? Estella had no time to ponder this mystery further, as she was dragged down with immense force. If this continued, she and her hostage would be pulled back into the depths. She knew she had to act fast. "Relaxation and release of strength," she shouted, casting a spell. Her wand emitted a stream of sparks towards the tentacle, which momentarily paused and then relaxed its grip, freeing Estella's leg. However, the spell's effect was limited to just that one tentacle. The other two tentacles, seemingly enraged, attacked her with renewed vigor. Above the lake, Ethan, seated in the referee's stand, noticed the distressing situation unfolding. In the view provided, Estella and her hostage were being separated by a massive tentacle, and her protective head bubble curse had been broken. In a panic, Estella attempted to recast the head bubble curse, but her spell failed due to her nervousness. To make matters worse, another tentacle wrapped around her waist and pulled her violently underwater, causing her to lose grip of her wand. This dramatic scene did not go unnoticed by the audience. With only 3 champions still in the lake and the other 2 not presenting much of interest, Estella, though not as prominent as Fleur or Hermione, attracted attention due to her predicament. The absence of a protective aura around her made her situation all the more dire. Concerned whispers spread among the students watching, with some of the younger witches unable to bear the sight. Heads turned away, unable to bear the sight of the unfolding cruelty. Maxim's heart clenched in distress. Without a moment's hesitation, he turned towards Dumbledore, his plea urgent and devoid of any concern for his own dignity. Principal Dumbledore, Hogwarts has already won this match. Please, dispatch the guarding Aurors immediately to rescue our Beauxbatons champions and the hostages. The urgency in his voice was palpable. The Dumont family, a prestigious name in the French wizarding commune, would find it hard to forgive any harm that came to Estella. As Dumbledore prepared to respond, Tonks, who had been near the referee's box, sprang into action. She shed her Auror uniform as she ran, revealing a swimsuit that clung to her fit figure, her toned muscles and sleek lines evident even in the rush of the moment. However, there was no time for admiration. She reached the pier and dove into the Black Lake without hesitation. This unexpected turn of events caused a stir among the spectators. 2 young Aurors, caught off guard, hurriedly began to undress, ready to follow Tonks into the lake. The audience, taken aback by the sudden emergency, watched the live broadcast with bated breath. Meanwhile, Estella struggled valiantly against the giant squid's formidable limbs, her efforts seeming futile as she was dragged deeper into the lake. The creature's full, terrifying form was now visible on the screen. Its body, 10 meters in length, was dwarfed only by its massive tentacles, making it comparable to the largest whales. Its skin, a rough purple red, was thick and scarred. Its eyes, each as large as a man, glowed with a sinister red light, piercing through the darkness. Its mouth, surrounded by thick tentacles, was filled with sharp fangs, and the suckers on its limbs were as large as bowls. The most fearsome were its 2 longest arms, covered in sharp barbs and ending in hook-shaped tips that gleamed coldly, capable of tearing any creature to shreds. Such a creature was nearing the legendary status of the North Sea Kraken. Look, aren't those Krum and Polyakov? A keen-eyed young wizard spotted 2 figures with shark heads near the giant squid, unmistakably the Durmstrang champions trying to escape. Karkaroff, previously smug, now shouted in panic at the Aurors, "You must save Krum and Polyakov as well." Dumbledore rose, his voice grave. "We must pause the game. I'll contact the mermaids." Only Ethan remained composed, his confidence unshaken. Mrs. Maxim, unable to tolerate his calmness, confronted him. "You assured us there were safety measures in place to protect the participants. Where are those safety measures now?" "Why the panic? The most dangerous moment has not yet arrived," Ethan replied calmly, even as the giant squid's mouth opened wide, its suction pulling in water and prey alike. Krum and Polyakov seemed powerless against the force, drawing ever closer to the creature's deadly maw. Ethan suddenly showed a smile and said, "Isn't this just perfect timing?" The picture displayed Tonks in a swimsuit. Chapter 379. Just as the 2 warriors were on the brink of being devoured by the giant squid, a blue-white magical aura erupted between them and the gaping maw of the abyss. Accompanied by a bone-chilling cold, swathes of ice blossoms spread out and a solid block of ice formed, effectively sealing the giant squid's enormous mouth. The creature, driven by instinct, chewed but could only grind the ice into slush. Krum and Polyakov, caught in the current, collided with the ice barrier but were spared from a grim fate. The audience, having held their breath in suspense, finally exhaled in relief, their curiosity piqued about the identity of their savior. Mrs. Maxim turned to Ethan, her tone noticeably softer. "Is this the protective measure you mentioned?" Ethan simply nodded in response, his silence speaking volumes. The crowd's attention was soon captured by another spectacle. Light particles coalesced in the arena, forming a luminous figure that transformed into a witch clad in a dark blue robe, her face partially concealed by a hood. Was this the person who had rescued the warriors? The hooded witch directed her magic at the giant squid once more. A flash of purple light severed the tentacle entangling Estella, leaving it limp. Estella was freed, and with another gesture from the witch, a current of water propelled the three warriors to safety behind her. The witch then turned her attention to Estella, who was struggling to breathe after losing her head bubble curse. With a gentle tap on the forehead from the witch's slender, beautiful fingers, a flash of blue light restored Estella's ability to breathe underwater. Grateful, Estella attempted to thank her, but could only produce bubbles. The witch, understanding the gesture, smiled and handed Estella her lost wand. The audience, relieved by the turn of events, buzzed with excitement. "The warriors are finally safe," they exclaimed, marveling at the timely intervention. Speculation about the witch's identity filled the air, with many admiring her beauty and prowess in magic. The referees, along with the audience, were eager to learn more about the mysterious savior. Dumbledore, observing the witch's skillful spellcasting without a wand or incantations, praised her abilities. The other principals shared his astonishment, pondering the emergence of such a powerful wizard in their midst. Karkaroff felt overwhelmed by the rapid changes in the magical world, with new geniuses emerging, Voldemort's return, and now the appearance of mysterious witches. Mrs. Maxim, intrigued by the witch's unique method of spellcasting, speculated on her true nature, suggesting that she might not be a traditional wizard at all. The identity of this enigmatic and powerful woman, who had appeared seemingly out of nowhere to save the day, remained a mystery, leaving everyone in awe of her abilities and curious about her origins. On the elevated platform, Ludo Bagman was making speculative announcements. As we all know, the Yin Kingdom is famous for its legend of the Lake Fairy. Legend has it that Merlin was acquainted with a lake fairy, possessing magic distinct from that of wizards. Unfortunately, their existence has never been confirmed by anyone's eyes. It's rumored that our temporary referee, invited by Mr. Green, might actually be the legendary lake fairy. If true, this would be a moment where myth transforms into reality. As he spoke, all eyes turned to Ethan, filled with disbelief that he might actually be acquainted with a fairy of the lake. Meanwhile, beneath the lake's surface, the situation was rapidly evolving. Oops, the giant squid is infuriated by the lake fairy's magic and is preparing to attack. The broadcast showed the squid's tentacles thrashing wildly, churning the water into a frenzy. Despite the arcane eye being cast with a stabilizing spell, the image was shaky, rotating continuously as the squid let out a thunderous roar, challenging the fairy. Unperturbed, the lake fairy clasped her hands and whispered an incantation. A force field barrier materialized in front of her, its presence only hinted at by the light refracting through the water. To the untrained eye, she appeared to be shielded by an invisible fortress. When the squid's tentacles struck with tremendous force, they met the barrier with a loud clash but failed to penetrate it. The squid, enraged, launched another assault, this time extending tentacles from multiple directions in a cunning attempt to breach the fairy's defenses. However, the lake fairy remained composed, skillfully manipulating magical energy. Although unable to sustain a larger barrier, she adeptly redirected the force field to intercept attacks from any direction, effectively neutralizing the squid's relentless onslaught. The battle intensified, with the squid's attacks stirring the lake bed into chaos, displacing mud, sand, rocks, shells, and aquatic plants. Even the Grindylows fled, fearing entanglement in the fierce skirmish that even disturbed the lake's surface, causing it to bubble like boiling water. In the heart of the turmoil, the lake fairy showed no fear. She even deactivated her force field wall, nimbly dodging the tumultuous water. Her movements made the squid's massive limbs seem clumsy by comparison. Whenever an unavoidable attack loomed, she counterattacked promptly. A flash of purple light would paralyze the squid's limbs, draining their strength and halting their destructive momentum. Soon, the giant squid was visibly exhausted under her relentless counterattacks. Seizing the moment, she encircled the squid and unleashed a towering column of boiling water, scalding the creature with its high temperature. Bubbles burst forth, striking the giant squid's head with precision. The impact area darkened as if scorched. The giant squid emitted a piercing scream, its massive body thrashing in the seawater. Despite its struggle, the creature couldn't overcome the attack. Its remarkable vitality allowed it to recover quickly, preparing to launch another assault on the lake's fairy with its formidable teeth and claws. However, the brief moment of vulnerability had given the fairy the chance to recite the final spell. The lake water began to converge and swirl rapidly, forming a colossal vortex. This vortex expanded continuously, eventually becoming a waterspout several meters in diameter and reaching hundreds of meters into the sky. The waterspout's power was so immense that even the distant Murloc villages felt its impact. Terrified, the Murlocs hid in their homes, clinging to door frames and walls, too afraid to venture out. The fairy in the lake would not have dared to summon such magic if the warriors had been nearby, yet even they were not spared from the waterspout's effects. The tornado stretched above the water, extending directly into the clouds, resembling a dragon drawing water upwards. The waterspout's force hoisted water, along with everything in it, high into the sky. Professors stood and gathered at the shore, wands raised to shield themselves from the unexpected deluge. However, it wasn't just water that rained down. Gravel, seaweed, shells, fish, and even a wizard's lost boots from the previous day fell amidst the chaos, creating a bizarre scene that captivated the young wizards, eager to discover what treasures they might find. "Damn it, let me go!" A voice roared from the crowd. Turning, they saw a Grindylow had landed on Malfoy's head, its tentacles clinging tightly. Crabbe and Goyle rushed to his aid in a panic, only for one to be bitten by the creature. The waterspout drew in everything around it, including the giant squid, which struggled to anchor itself to the rocks with its tentacles. However, the force of the waterspout was so strong that it uprooted even the rocks, sucking the giant squid into its grasp. The fairy in the lake then altered her hand movements, and the massive waterspout condensed into a giant, rotating vortex water ball, trapping the giant squid at its center. Despite its confinement, the squid thrashed, attempting to break free and retaliate against the fairy's formidable magic. "Godric, that's enough," the fairy in the lake exclaimed, her voice a mixture of sternness and nostalgia. "Even in beast form, your wisdom should prevent you from succumbing to such madness." She extended her hand towards the giant squid, her tone softening as she sensed the presence of a malicious potion. "Rude juniors, attempting to control you with such vile concoctions. But I have faith, Godric, that you won't let them prevail." With her hands outstretched, she emitted a burst of white magic light that penetrated the giant squid's head. The advanced dispelling magic gradually neutralized the potion's effects. The squid's original sense of reason resurfaced, calming its violent instincts. Its once blood-red eyes softened, revealing a glimpse of the gentle creature it once was, under the watchful care of the fairy in the lake. Chapter 380, The Calm After the Storm. As the giant squid returned to its normal state, the lake fairy ceased the creation of the vortex, setting it free. With a graceful kick, she glided in front of the giant squid, placing her hand gently on the skin between its eyes, whispering words to it. Unfortunately, the sound transmission underwater was limited, making it impossible for the audience to hear her words through the mystical eye, especially from such a distance. The interaction between the lake fairy and the giant squid was intriguing. Typically, the area between a squid's eyes is extremely sensitive, not a place one would casually touch. However, the giant squid seemed to recognize that the fairy had helped it regain its senses, or perhaps they shared a long-standing acquaintance. In any case, the giant squid was remarkably docile in her presence, almost as if they were reminiscing about old times. After a lengthy conversation, the lake fairy waved goodbye to the giant squid, which responded with a deep roar before disappearing into the depths of the Black Lake. Then, to the audience's surprise, the lake fairy appeared directly in front of the mystical eye, capturing it in her hand. She examined the device with curiosity, marveling at its ability to transmit live images. "The magic of this era is truly advanced," she commented, her voice finally captured by the mystical eye due to the close proximity. This statement caused a stir among the professors, who were embarrassed by the implication that modern magic was not as advanced as they thought, attributing the innovation instead to Ethan's magic. From her words, it was clear that the Fairy of the Lake was aware of the Triwizard Tournament and, as Ethan had mentioned, likely served as a non-staff security officer he had invited. Addressing Ethan directly through the mystical eye, she confirmed the completion of her task. "I have ensured that the giant squid is back to normal and no longer a threat to the champions," she stated, her tone turning serious. She warned Ethan of the gentle nature of the giant squid and suggested that its madness was the result of human interference, indicating potential dangers within the Triwizard Tournament. With a final reminder for Ethan to be cautious, the Lake Fairy transformed into a point of light and vanished, leaving the audience in awe. The brief conflict and the subsequent downpour had come and gone, leaving the students buzzing with excitement and curiosity. The appearance of the Lake Fairy, the behavior of the giant squid, and the ominous warning left much to be discussed. Questions about the Lake Fairy's identity, her connection to Ethan, and the cause behind the giant squid's madness sparked heated debates. However, the competition itself seemed to fade into the background amidst the intrigue. The referees, particularly Dumbledore, sought explanations from Ethan regarding the Lake Fairy. As Hogwarts had gained a powerful new neighbor, it was natural for the headmaster to express concern. Ethan patiently addressed their inquiries, hinting at the mysterious nature of the Lake Fairy's existence without revealing too much. "Consider her akin to the Lady of the Lake," Ethan began, addressing the curious crowd. "Yes, she has indeed been a part of Hogwarts for a very long time. To be precise, she has been here since the school's inception. I only discovered her existence 2 years ago and only recently found a way to awaken her," Ethan continued. "Don't worry, she harbors no hostility towards Hogwarts. In many ways, she acts as a guardian of the school." "Yes, she agreed to assist me out of gratitude for awakening her," Ethan concluded, effectively satisfying the curiosity of those around him while simultaneously spreading misinformation without leaving any trace. In the minds of his audience, this mysterious woman was now an ancient lake fairy who had been protecting the Black Lake since before Hogwarts was founded. However, due to the Lady of the Lake having been asleep for so long, there were few records of her and Hogwarts history, aside from a handful of rumors. It was Ethan who had awakened her, and because of this, she was willing to assist him with some small favors. Ethan had not lied, but he had misled everyone by weaving together several real Fairy of the Lake rumors found in the school's history. In reality, these so-called Fairy of the Lake rumors are widespread across the Yin Kingdom, similar to how every village has its own local legends of gods and ghosts. Many of these rumors originated from the activities of wizards witnessed by Muggles, who mistook the wizards for the Lady of the Lake. As a result, rumors of the Lake Lady spread, and wizards began to believe in her existence after hearing about it. The reason Ethan was able to successfully mislead Dumbledore and the others without them suspecting that the Lady of the Lake was actually a powerful wizard was due to the mysterious appearance and spellcasting methods. This sudden appearance and disappearance were actually the spirit's ability to transform into a spiritual body. The spellcasting method, which did not require a wand, stemmed from abilities that had been elevated to legend. In essence, these were all the means of a heroic spirit, but combined with the rumor of the Lake Fairy, the heroic spirit Rowena Ravenclaw had firmly established the identity of the Lake Fairy. As Ethan was explaining, the remaining 3 champions who had survived the giant squid's attack were finally able to complete the rest of the task. By this time, the 1-hour time limit for the task had long passed. About 5 minutes later, Klum was the 4th to return to shore with his hostage, followed by Polyakov as the 6th. Poor Estella Dumont, who might have been the 4th, suffered a significant setback. The squid attack interrupted her return journey, and she was dragged away by the giant squid, while her hostage floated to an unknown location. After the danger had passed, Estella had to search the vast lake's bottom with the help of the mermaids. Finally, before the audience fell asleep from the weight, she managed to recover her hostage. Thanks to the quality of the suspended animation potion provided by Dumbledore, her hostage did not wake up midway and risk suffocation in the water. Eventually, all the champions and hostages made it to the shore, completing the picture of the fairy in the lake.